Good evening, race fans, and welcome here to the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Tonight, it's the season finale, the time to crown a champion for the G-Force Sim Racing Hijinx Clothing Company Vintage Cup Series here this evening at the Atlanta Motor Speedway, the D-shaped mile and a half with the oldest track surface on the NASCAR schedule. I'm Seth Cole, alongside of Anthony McCurry, as we bring you coverage of the Last Call 200. Anthony, here tonight, the championship has basically already been decided. Now for all these drivers, for the most part, it's just to see who's going to finish out the season with that final W.
Yeah, it's going to be a pretty much a long race for all these drivers, and Hank Steinmiller does come into this race pretty much with the championship locked up. However, the battle between second and third place in the standings between Johnson and Morse is still pretty heated. One of those two could finish further up than the other one, so that battle is still on. But going into this race is definitely going to be put it in cruise for the 63 team, and just come out with a finish is basically all they need. But for all these other drivers, like you said, they're going to be vying for a last win, and it's going to be hard to beat some of these front runners, such as Steinmiller, the pole sitter, Jeff Green on the front row in second place, and then you've got Tellier and Hamlet. So it's going to be a long one for these guys, and one that certainly everybody wants to win.
Hank Steinmiller, of course, winning 3 weeks ago. That was his third win of the season at North Wilkesboro. The guy who's been on a hot streak, though, the last couple of weeks is the defending champion, the outgoing champion, if you will, Christopher Morse Jr. He's gone to victory lane in the last 2 weeks at both Rockingham last week and Charlotte the week before. He now sits atop the standings in terms of wins, 4 wins on the season for the 3-car. He'll be looking for a 5th one here tonight.
It was a late season charge for the 3 team to get most of those wins, most of them coming in the second half, but not quite enough to really vie for the championship, as, again, Hank Steinmiller really put on the gas and never really looked back at the second half of the season, putting together quite a few string of wins, and he hasn't won the most out of the season so far. Well, I mean, this is the last race. He hasn't won that many races as compared to some of these other drivers, such as Morse Jr. and the like, but definitely the consistency has been there for Hank Steinmiller, and it's kind of sad that we've come to the end of the season. It's one of those seasons where you don't want to see go, but sadly enough, we are here. But it's also happy because these drivers, you know that they want to put on a great show to go out with a bang.
Absolutely. We showed you the starting grid. 13 drivers put down time. 14th off the grid will be Robert Kenny, and 15th will be Randy Koking. 2 drivers did not get onto the grid that were here during the practice session. Blaine Akin and Gerald Campbell, a couple of former winners from this season. We'll see if they get on at any point in time in tonight's 133-lap main event feature. But here we go. The season finale here in G-Force is under the green. Steinmiller going to lead us to that green flag. Wide there around the 5th, 6th position. Another championship that is up for grabs here tonight is the Owners' Championship. CRM currently sitting atop the standings, and basically if one of their 3 drivers, either Hank Steinmiller, the Daytona winner Cooper Johnson, or the 07 of Seth Harrelson, if any of them finish up inside the top 5, they've locked up that championship as well.
It's going to be hard to beat one of those drivers, that being Hank Steinmiller, right now leading the way over Jeff Green. Leads the first lap, almost a half-second gap back to Green at the moment. Speaking of Cooper Johnson, I don't know what it was, but he bailed out of the throttle on the start, went to the apron, and has fallen back into 7th place. Now has gathered it up and going forward. They're almost 3 wide in front of him. It certainly looked like that Shane Tyrion was thinking about going 3 wide underneath Tellier, but backs out of it as Tellier goes to the inside of Harrelson, sporting a very different looking 07 tonight.
Yeah, definitely is. Ooh, got a little loose there with that Clemson scheme on his 07. Mike Tellier behind there in the FRN colors. There's Shane Tyrion, 2-time winner, jumping up to the outside of the 97. Peyton Hamlin, the 91, making a charge there to Jeff Green, and wow, look at that thing! Slideways through the center of 1 and 2.
He had to really hold on to it. It's still not very well in the right direction. Now to the inside goes Harrelson, trying to take advantage off the bobble, sliding up the track, trying to get it down to the inside, but it looks like the middle line is going to be the fastest line around the track as Hamlet pulls right back in front, and here comes Tyrion on the outside to follow him.
You remember after they did the update here with the 87 cars, a lot of times drivers told us that they were dealing more with the tight condition on entry than they were the usual loose off the center like we were seeing. Well, I think that with this old track surface, that old feeling of the back end wanting to step out is back with the 87 cars. Is a great save there by Peyton Hamlet. Second time he's been in trouble here in the first 4 laps.
And he's going to fall back to at least the 8th position as Michael Blanton goes alongside. Somebody else that had a bobble throughout 1 and 2 was Randy Koking. He was sideways and down onto the inside apron. He's actually gotten back going the right way, long ways back behind the field as they continue to run around the racetrack. Relatively okay in the top 5, but there is a battle right now between 3rd place Shane Tyrion, who's just now taken 3rd place, and Seth Harrelson, who around the outside is going to have a run.
Make room there on the top side, following in the wake of Jeff Green down the back straightaway. Those two will remain side by side, Tyrion and Harrelson for the 3rd spot. Mike Tellier very low there out of turn 4. Cooper Johnson going to jump to his outside, and you brought up about Cooper Johnson kind of ducking out of line there at the start of this race. Let's not forget that's kind of been his MO, especially at the tracks where we know tire wear is going to be a thing. He just kind of finds himself a safe spot on the racetrack, preserves those good years, and then we start to see him make a lot of forward progress the longer the run goes on.
It is a long race, so not a bad strategy to kind of back out of some of this 2 and 3 wide racing to save some tires, as it seems like that everyone's favoring the higher line of the racetrack at this point in the race. Running at the top of the track will allow you to save some tires. You're not having to turn the wheel as hard to get through the turn and carrying some speed down the straightaways. As right now, everyone's bobbling up around where Jeff Green is running for 2nd place. Is now Seth Harrelson on the outside is going to try and get the pass done there. He got it done on Tyrion. He's going to try and get it done on Jeff Green. I saw someone get out of line back there. I think that was Dinovich. It was Dinovich that almost spun around.
Number 29 with those Steve Park colors there, going to drop all the way back to 14th, but gather is back up. One thing about this season, Anthony, we've obviously, as we mentioned, had Hank Steinmiller with 3 victories. You've got Christopher Morse Jr. with 4 victories, but it's been very diverse in the number of drivers have gone to victory lane. If you look at our top 5 right now, every single one of those drivers have a win this season. Jeff Green winning at Nashville a couple of months ago. Seth Harrelson near the beginning of the season winning at Texas. Of course, Cooper Johnson winning at Daytona. Tyrion a 2-time winner. So there's been a lot of drivers that have been able to capture checkered flags during the course of this season.
A lot of drivers visiting victory lane this season, to your point, and a lot of them have done it in pretty different forms of racing. We'll go back to Cooper Johnson. He won probably one of the craziest Daytona races I think I've ever seen in my life, period, and was able to get out of pretty much everyone was facing the wrong direction. He was able to get going back the right direction the first and got the win out of some very interesting circumstances, but a win nonetheless. Jeff Green finally gets a win this season after being consistently running in the top 5 or have gotten spun out of the top 5 a number of times this season. Shane Tyrion, one of those drivers that won a lot of those races based on just all-out speed and was able to really maintain a great pace over everyone else, kind of like what Hank Steinmiller is doing. And speaking of the part of Hank Steinmiller, he's one of those drivers that is doing it again tonight, just getting out in front, not battling with anybody else. He's opened up almost a second gap over the rest of the field. That's what you got to do in this late stage of the season. In fact, the last race, go out on a bang. You've basically locked up the championship. You might as well put a period on that statement. Go out with the championship, but also a win to back it up.
Well, I think that especially based off of the fact he wasn't able to find victory lane last season at all and was up there in the hunt for the championship this season, 3 trips to victory lane. If he were to win tonight, that's not a period. That's an exclamation point on what's been a career year for that 63. You got Cooper Johnson looking to the top side of Jeff Green for 3rd. But I mean, so many other drivers as well that went to victory lane during the course this year. Blaine Atkin, as we mentioned. John Whitendorf, 2-time winner, but then, obviously real life getting in the way. He wasn't able to make these races. You have to wonder if Whitendorf had still been in the field here down this home stretch, just how different the championship picture might have looked between himself and Hank Steinmiller coming into Atlanta tonight.
It could have been much different. We could have had a battle between at least 4 people if all the people that have been dominant in the last or the first half of the season had made it through the second half of the season. When you talk about Blaine Atkin, he just now got past. He has just now gotten past, as I think we have a spinner in the back. I think Dinovich has gone around on the back straightaway. Well, if he did, he got to go in the right way before he went all the way around. We're still under green, but that 29 not in the best ways at the moment. But you go back to Blaine Atkin. He has just now, at the last race of the season, been passed for the most laps led this season. He came, well, when he exited the series before the halfway point, he had 500 laps led throughout the entirety of the first half of the season. The driver that beat him is our leader, and he's got 538. So he's run all season long and just beat Blaine Atkin's record. So can you imagine what happens if he is raced all season long, that being Blaine Atkin? Can you imagine if Ryan Lutz had raced all season? He was spotty throughout the season, didn't make the opener or the second race for that matter, but then came in late in the first half of the season and hasn't really run as many races as we thought he would have. He had a lot of dominating runs and racked up to tie the most amount of wins for our points leader, being 3. So you imagine if he had run all season, this could be a battle between not only Weitendorf and Steinmiller, but also Atkin and Lutz.
And those 3 wins you're talking about there for Ryan Lutz, they happened in the span of 6 races. So when he popped on the scene, he came in with a ton of momentum. You've also got Gerald Campbell. I mentioned the fact that he was here tonight running some practice laps, did not put down a qualifying lap time, and is not on the grid right now. We currently see his name grayed out in 16th. So I'm not sure if he's still in the server or not, as we had a little bit of contact exchange between some teammates there, Harrelson and Johnson for second place. But Campbell was a 2-time winner, and I think even the more so problem for Gerald Campbell was the fact that he would have those good races, but then he would have really poor performances that just kind of countered the max points he would get in the races where he would do well. The inconsistency, I think, is what really hurt him and took him out potentially of the championship picture.
And you gotta wonder, going into the season now, it's briefed in the rules that they use the classic set of point system where you don't necessarily get into, there is no playoffs, and you don't necessarily have that crutch of if I win and then...
Jackson McLaren! Robert Kenny's already cut you off. What a save by both drivers. Now Kenny's in the wall again. We're on board with him, and he's going to overcorrect it into the wall. Mike Tellier in the 97 collected as well. There's your first caution of the day.
You could see it starting to brew as well. There was about 7 cars running second on back to 8th that were just kind of tailgating each other, and then it broke. Robert Kenny, the first one to experience the wall, and unfortunately picks up Mike Tellier along with him. I don't think anyone else was involved. It might have just been the 2, but you could sense it for the last couple of laps.
Not sure how we ended up getting that amazing camera angle at the very moment that the contact took place between the 7 and the 34. Now, we're going to look at this. Does the 7 lose it by himself, then get aided by Kenny, or is there contact between the 2 heading into that turn? I think they may have made a slight bit amount of contact.
There was a little bit between Kenny and the 7 going into turn 3. I think just the slightest of touch was enough to send McLaren into a bit of a scary moment for him. But then Kenny goes up onto the outside of the track, and I don't think he started spinning until he hit the wall, and then that's when the car bobbled to the left. I think he just overcorrected.
Running on board here with Mike Tellier. There you saw the follow-up, the finish-up of the contact between McLaren and Kenny. And the tough break there is that Kenny had the thing saved, but then when he brushed the wall, the back end wanting to snap out, not getting any air to that rear spoiler, being up against that outside safer barrier, snaps him around, and nowhere for Mike Tellier in the 97 to go. And the thing we haven't pointed out tonight, although people that have been watching this series week after week will know, outside of the super speedways, these drivers do not have a faster pair, so that could be day done for the Tabasco fiasco of Robert Kenny.
He sits on pit road, still not getting back out yet. So too does Kevin Dinovich. He had a brush with the inside wall in the back stretch a couple laps before that this incident happened. So Robert Kenny just trying to finish this race out, not in any way battling for the points lead. However, he would like to finish this race out to get his season done and dusted. He is actually coming back on track at the moment, so I don't think he'll go a lap down. I think he's still on the lead lap.
Well, we talked about the fact that there is that one championship still up for grabs for these drivers, and that, of course, is that team championship. Well, CRM, as we said, had to have one of the drivers finish inside the top 5. They've got the podium spots right now. Steinmiller, Johnson in row 1, Harrelson's going to restart on the inside of row 2 alongside of Jeff Green. Then it's Hank Steinmiller and Christopher Morse Jr., four-time winner of the last 2 races, the outgoing champion. You talk about Hank Steinmiller wanting a statement win. If you're the guy that is basically now going to be going into the next season as the former champion, you want to finish out the season with another victory as well.
And indeed, you want to put a stamp on it that says that you might have got me this season, but you better watch out for next season because I'm going to be coming after you. And Christopher Morse Jr., again, coming into this season as the defending champion, he'd already had a pretty big target on his back. And then having Hank Steinmiller, who was really the guy who was battling last season for the championship alongside of Morse. This time around, Steinmiller gets it. So what do? Best 2 out of 3 for these 2 drivers, you think, maybe going into season 3?
Yeah, I would think so, no doubt about it. I think that there's going to be a lot of pride on the line for both of those drivers heading into the upcoming season as the pace car is going to turn them loose. Here we go for our first restart of the day. We went 16 laps under the green flag there for the first run. We'll see what happens here now as all these drivers have that fresh rubber underneath them going into turn 1.
So far, everyone kind of single filed out throughout the top 5. I say that as now Christopher Morse Jr. using that outside line that Seth Harrelson was able to use oh so well the last green flag run. Gets away from Jeff Green relatively easy as well. It looked like no struggle for the 3 machine. And now behind, Tyrion is actually getting charged to the inside by Houndshell. This is interesting. I never think that Houndshell was going to duck into the inside, but Tyrion knows that middle to high line is the way to go, and it looks like everyone's starting to defend it now more than they would be the inside line.
Jake Houndshell coming into this race 4th in the overall standings. He might have a shot at Morse Jr. for 3rd in the overall points here this evening. He's a total of 56 points behind Morse for P3. Morse Jr. also has a shot to get 2nd place from Cooper Johnson, only minus 25 behind the 14, but nobody, at least right now, with the pace the 63 is running, nobody's going to be able to take the championship away from Hank Steinmiller.
Absolutely. The way that he's been running the second half of the season, and I'm not really sure where this pace came from. He won at Talladega, or was it? It was Talladega, correct?
Yes.
Okay, he won at Talladega, and then all of a sudden, we saw life come out of the 63 machine. I don't know of a time where that's really happened, except for maybe last season when Morse had that late season charge, but even then, it wasn't as severe as we've seen with Hank Steinmiller. It must have flipped a switch in his morale to know that, hey, look, I've gone throughout the season having not gotten a win, but consistently running in the top 5, always coming up short, and then finally gets the win. And then new life was breathed into this team and this driver. And it's been impressive to watch him late in the season just go on tears that we didn't see him do in the first half of the season and at tracks that we had been to in the first half of the season. You think, oh, we got a car on the wall in the back, though. As I was monologuing, that was Hamlet that went in the wall. I think he's gotten it up.
Yep, slow on the back straight away, but didn't spin it.
So staying under green for the moment, but tracks that we've been to Rockingham twice so far. We've been to Richmond twice. We've been to North Wilkesboro, I believe, twice. A lot of these tracks that we've gone to we've been to Atlanta twice, I believe. So these tracks we've gone to multiple times. It's a night and day transition to see that this driver at the same tracks is a completely different scenario.
Well, and going to your point there as well about it seeming like after he got that win at Talladega, the confidence level ramped up. Let's not forget as well, though, that if we look at the statistics coming into tonight, Hank Steinmiller has the 2nd highest average finishing position on the year, second only to John Whitendorf, and let's remember that Steinmiller has run many more races here during the course of the season than Whitendorf has, so you got to kind of take that statistic with a little bit of a grain of salt. So as we talked about, the drivers that found victory lane multiple times this season, like Gerald Campbell, like Ryan Lutz, Blaine Akin, that was all near the beginning of the season. We have to remember, Steinmiller, yes, he wasn't up front, he wasn't leading those laps, but he was there in the top 5 consistently, week after week. And when you consider the fact that they use the classic point system, there's no winning your in scenario, no playoffs, the consistency awards champions, and that's exactly what Steinmiller's been able to do. Now with the fact that Akin, he didn't run the full season, same for Campbell, same for Lutz, that then opened the door for the consistency to put him, instead of P2, P3, up in the race lead to take these checkered flags.
And just being there, you hit the nail on the head, just being there to take advantage of drivers that might fall in and out of the series, that's all he had to do. And looking at it from that perspective, maybe this is the same Hank Steinmiller that we've seen all season long. It's just now it's spotlighted on him because out of all those drivers that have been contending for the championship early in the season, this is the driver that decided to stick with it. This is the driver that out of everybody, now you can say Christopher Morse Jr. as well. 3 wide, by the way, for second place, as we've been talking about Hank Steinmiller, Seth Harrelson on the outside, Morse and Johnson make up the inside lanes and they settle it out. But this battle for second place is riveting right now. But he was the one that stayed. He was the one that stayed consistent, and he's the one that's here at the end. Same with Christopher Morse Jr. He's the one that's been up there as well, but he had a pretty dismal first half of the season by comparison to his first season in the league when he won the championship. So maybe a bit of a rocky start, but got back into it then. And also, you can say the same thing for the 14 machine of Johnson. He was also consistent, won the season opener, and then continued to stay consistent, running second place in the standings right now, but not to the level of consistency that we've seen from Hank Steinmiller.
And just to touch on Steinmiller again, too, I'm trying to remember, I think it was when he got his first win on the season back at Talladega. We talked to him post-race, and he said, oh, Harrelson getting the wall there off of 4. But he said, you know, we were in the hunt for the championship back in season 1 as well. We were consistent. The thing that hurt us was we just weren't able to find victory lane. Morse Jr. was able to multiple times during the course of that season. He was able to reap those bonus points, and that was what was able to give him that bit of a gap over us and why we weren't able to make it a closer battle in the season finale. So the fact now that the tables have turned and he's been able to find victory lane, I think you're exactly right. It's the same old Hank Steinmiller. He's just now been able to find a little bit more confidence and finally be able to get that car in victory lane where, in all honesty, he probably should have had it a couple of times back in season 1.
Absolutely.
We got trouble in the back there. Michael Blanton, he's on pit road. Now, I ended up actually just noticing on the telemetry a couple of laps ago, he was starting to fall down the running order. I would hazard a guess he probably got up into the outside wall.
I'm gonna go back and check that because he has fallen back quite a bit. And it is actually a multiple car incident that, well, so it was a reactionary thing. What happened with Blanton in the 43, he got loose in turn 2 and just caught the car, and then Dinovich had another moment in the same turn, also saved the machine. And then later on, it looks like that Blanton might have gotten a little bit of a piece of he got a piece of the 85 of Goshen that sent him up and tagged the wall slightly and then continued on. But yeah, there was definitely some contact with the 43. And in fact, he has, I believe, retired the car at this point in time. And Michael Blanton is another story. He's been consistent as well. He's been making the starts all season long. He has missed a few races, but still, it's one of those drivers that we've consistently mentioned all season long. He started out strong, finishing top 10 almost every race, and then kind of fell off as well. It would have been fun to watch what Blanton could have done because he had fast runs all season.
Yeah, I remember they had that truck special event. I believe, is McLaren hitting the wall there off of turn 2. They had that little bit of an off-week special event where Morse Jr. would go on to win, but Michael Blanton was very much so a factor in that race and also was a big factor in the Battle of Bristol as well. But he came into tonight's event after a limited number of starts this season, 22nd in the point standings, and he has gone to the garage. Jerry, you mentioned about Kevin Dinovich. He also has just recently brought his number 29 to pit lane and made the hard left-hand turn to the garage. I'm seeing some smoke there off of turn 2. I'm almost wondering if maybe that might have been the end of the race there for Dinovich, maybe off the second corner.
Potentially. I know he was struggling a few laps ago when he didn't make contact with the 43, but he did spin, or almost spin in the same turn, so might have been that did it. But 100 laps to go in the season, just crossed to complete lap 33 on lap 34, giving us 100 laps to go, and we have 100 laps to enjoy the racing. It's been, never mind. Jackson McLaren, I think, has just spun it off at turn 2. He's trying to hold on to it. He's gone all the way around on the back straightaway. Caution's out.
Caution out with oncoming traffic. Good job there, though, by Jackson McLaren, locking up those rear tires, making sure it didn't migrate back up in front of the drivers on the high line. Single car incident to bring out this yellow, although 91 of Peyton Hamlet smoking on the apron there. Heading into turn 3, he's had his own little mini incident, it looks like.
I think he's tagged the wall going out of turn 2. Oh, he got loose and hit the wall out of turn 2. So we have 2 separate incidences under this caution, and I wonder which brought out the caution. I don't know if it was Peyton Hamlet or if it was Jackson McLaren.
I would hazard a guess it probably was the 7, because you see there Randy Koking and I believe that's James Goshen coming into the vicinity, and the 7 is clearly up above that white line, so that would theoretically be read as on the racing surface, but just a little bit of a slap there on the right side on his machine. He was able to snap the thing back around to the right, did not make contact with the inside wall, so McLaren should be okay. I think he's had some very good speed here early on in this race, and let's now go back to what you were describing there with Peyton Hamlet getting the wall off of turn 2, and he must have hit it a ton, because looking here, the front end of the car is intact, and then when we saw him on the back straightaway, oh wow, yeah, that is a shot. My goodness, the whole front end completely ripped off, almost kind of a la what happened to Robert Kenny, that overcorrecting nose first into the outside safer barrier.
Yeah, it looks like he was starting to go around the middle of 1 and 2, and then he just never was able to quite catch it up, and he got a lot of oversteer and then snaps right when he thought he had it saved, but then overcorrected. And that's the thing about these cars. It's really easy to overcorrect in them. You don't have much downforce, and then when your tires do grip, they'll go wherever you're telling them to go. And unfortunately, that was straight up into the wall. Blown engine, that is Peyton Hamlet's day done, definitely. As, again, no fast repairs for the non-super speedway races. An unfortunate race for Peyton Hamlet, because he was also one of those drivers that, while he wasn't up battling for a championship much, he certainly was one of those drivers that was trying to make every start in the race and certainly had a top 10 car most of the season. So it's a shame to see him go out of the season early.
So here's something I've been thinking of all week. We're at Atlanta, a D-shaped mile and a half. If you remember the last D-shaped mile and a half we were at, it was a couple of weeks ago at Charlotte. Chris Morse Jr. pulling off the 2-tire strategy and kept everyone at bay to pick up that victory. And we talked to a number of drivers afterwards. We talked to Thierry and we talked to Steinmiller. They said, man, I'd forgotten that strategy worked out. I think they had actually somebody had pulled off that strategy back at Texas around the midway portion of the schedule, and they'd forgotten that strategy works out. We've got an older track surface here tonight at Atlanta, but is that something that's in the back of everybody's minds based off the fact it's worked in the past at D-shaped mile and a half racetracks?
I certainly think it's in their playbook for late in the race. I don't think it would be smart to do it now, given that we're not halfway through the race yet. But if you're in a position where taking 2 tires might give you track position, then absolutely go for it maybe within 20 laps, maybe 30 laps at the most. Absolutely. We've seen it work. We've seen it work at Charlotte. We've seen it work at Texas. We've seen it work at pretty much all the other D-shaped mile and a half we've gone to take a gamble. It's the final race of the season. You don't really have anything to lose at this point in the race or this point in the season. You only have everything to gain next season when these drivers come back. So maybe try something that you could put into your playbook for next season. If this is the chance to try something then that you can possibly use for the later race or future races, then absolutely go for it. But again, don't do it now. It's definitely not the time to do it now.
The 2 things I would think would factor in, of course, I'm not out there in the car. I don't know what these drivers are dealing with, but one thing I've noticed is they seem to really like that top line, almost literally against the outside wall the longer the run goes on. So I'm not necessarily certain if you've got worn lefts and fresh rights, if you're going to be able to hold that line without the car wanting to push up into the wall. And of course, the second thing is too, let's remember Charlotte, Texas, those tracks are all repaved. This is Atlanta, the most worn surface out there on the NASCAR schedule. There's very little grip available to these drivers, so that might actually negate the 2-tire strategy as well. I think maybe every time you come to pit road, you want those 4 fresh Goodyears underneath you. But again, as you mentioned, though, it's the end of the season. The championship's already decided. Right now, it's also looking like CRM's going to lock up the Owners' Championship. They've had all 3 of their drivers up here inside the top 6 all race long, and they just need one of them to finish up inside the top 5. So why not? Take the risk. There's no consequences. Chance of maybe being able to pick up a checkered flag before the season's over. I think you're going to have those gamblers. I think everything I just named off there, all of those don'ts in terms of taking the 2 tires, there's still going to be somebody out there saying, hey, what have I got to lose?
Absolutely. That's the beauty of the final race of the season. We're back under green. And Hank Steinmiller wasn't waiting around for anybody else. He caught everybody sleeping, except for maybe Jeff Green, because he's the only driver that's been able to stay up with him. Now to the inside goes the 2. To the outside goes the 38 of Tyrion. And there's double wide behind them for make that 4th place as Harrelson trying to hold off Christopher Morse. Harrelson's been able to really make that outside line work. I'm surprised at how well the 07 is on the outside.
Just like in the initial start of this race, saw Cooper Johnson duck to the left, down to the inside, let a couple of drivers on by. I don't think he spun the tires. I think he was, again, just trying to get into a spot, run his own pace, but has now drifted him back to the 8th position behind Morse Jr. and Randy Koking. Battle for 2nd place, though. Shane Tyrion trying to close up there to Hank Steinmiller. He's got Jeff Green and Seth Harrelson following in his tire tracks. A little high there off of 2 for Jake Hounshaw as he almost brushed the wall in 5th.
If there's anybody that has the pace to potentially catch up to Hank Steinmiller, it's definitely been Shane Tyrion. We've seen a lot of these late race charges that come out of the 38, especially when he starts somewhere mid-pack, even at the back of the pack, as we saw a couple races ago. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him back up at the front of the field. What I would be surprised is to see Seth Harrelson potentially snipe this win away. He's been lurking around here. You know that he wants another win. Or make that, I think, his first win. No, he's got a win so far. So he might want another win to close out this season and to do it in a very different looking 07 that we've seen all season long. It kind of looks like, I know it's Clemson, but it kind of looks like a Dukes of Hazzard scheme as well, because it's got the orange and white kind of in the similar placement, but definitely wants to try and get another win. And so too does Jeff Green. Jeff Green is a former Grand National champion and doing incredibly well in the last race of the season, running in a 3rd place at the moment, but he's had a lot of struggles this season, and mostly due to other people either spinning or getting in and getting contact into them, but so far so good for the 2 machine.
Right now, running in the tire tracks of Shane Tyrion. Now about a half groove lower. Ooh, actually, I said a half groove lower, but I think the car got a little loose on him, and that pointed the car down that extra half groove. Nice gathering up, though, as Seth Harrelson right behind him. Oh, got a car that's slow. Randy Koking heading for pit lane. Oh, actually, I think he spun off of 4, went for a slide through the infield grass, and came to a stop around the 3rd or 4th pit stall.
He did, kind of. He got a little piece of the wall coming out of 4, and it shot him down to the inside, and rather than trying to pull it back up onto the racetrack, he just went onto pit road and stopped the car, and I think he's teleported to pit road. He's actually retired the car as far as I can see on my telemetry, so another driver falls to the ill-handling machine so far, as we got a battle for the lead as Tyrion has finally caught up to Steinmiller. Now, we've always said that catching and passing are 2 different things, and we're definitely seeing it where he's caught him.
Whoa!
He's having a whale of a time trying to pass him.
He's got to catch the car before he catches the 63 there out of turn 2. Great save there, though, by the 38.
Absolutely. Sideways coming out of turn 2. You could see the front end square with the camera facing the inside, so that tells you how sideways he was, but now he's fallen off quite a bit to Steinmiller. You got to think that with the old surface, how that affects the tire wear, because if you have too many of these slides, and it's definitely going to be more pronounced on this track than it would be at a freshly paved track. So I have to keep an eye on Tyrion to see if he starts falling off quicker than these other drivers that have been able to keep it straight. But so far, so good in the top 4, the top 5 even, as Jake Hounshaw has found his way inside the top 5 in front of Cooper Johnson.
Right now holding down the 5th position. It's been a great season despite not finding victory lane for both of the Hounshaws. Both of them up inside the top 5 in points. I mentioned Jake up in 4th, 117 laps led this season, 2 times starting from the pole. And then Jason Hounshaw, 5th in the overall standings coming to this one. Another driver that has really relied on consistency during the course of this year to put him where he is currently at. But the numbers don't lie either. He's got 2 top 5s and 16 top 10s coming to this race. That 16 top 10s is 3rd highest of drivers statistically in top 10s this season.
We consistently say Hounshaw throughout the season. It doesn't really matter if it's Jake or Jason. That shows you how much they have in the way of consistency. I don't think I've ever seen a race that not either one of the 2 of them has been inside the top 10. And yeah, the consistency, third and top 10s, that's incredible when you consider that that's at least half the season, if not more. So great on the Hounshaws. No wins to their credit, like we said, but still 4th and 5th in the standings as the lead of the race was under fire for a moment, but then it's not anymore as Tyrion has fallen back a little bit as Also, Johnson trying to close in on Jake Hounshell. Another driver that's found his way back here, and it's kind of a three-way battle for fifth place right now is Christopher Morse Jr. trying to get to the inside of Cooper Johnson, a bit too far back to make that work at the moment. And also Seth Harrelson hounding the back end of Jeff Green at the moment.
The interesting thing is here, you see Steinmiller consistently running the inside line, Tyrion running the top, where pretty much the majority of the field is running, and Steinmiller's been able to keep that 38 at bay. It's almost looking like to me that Hank Steinmiller right now running that inside line, it's actually a bit of an advantage to him because he knows what his car is capable of doing and trying to hook that white line. If you're going to make a pass here, you're probably going to have to go down to the inside. I don't think anybody's going to give up the top going into a corner.
Absolutely not, especially now that they know that that's the preferred line. You see everyone behind the 63 doing it, to what you said earlier. In fact, Jeff Green is so high up on the racetrack, he's basically scraping the wall, kind of using the Larson line, but so too is Harrelson. So they're both late in the race. You put it perfectly. I don't think that you're going to be able to really do anything on the inside line once these tires wear down, and definitely the outside is going to be the premium line. And that, I think, is why Tyrion's hasn't been able to really get around Steinmiller. Steinmiller's not defending the high line at all, but Tyrion has just not been able to get the speed on the high line in order to make the pass, because if you see the way that Steinmiller just sails it into these turns, he scrubs off barely any speed and is able to put the power down as soon as the car rotates. And you look at Tyrion, he's not been able to make that same strategy work. So you're seeing two completely different ways of running this track. And it's Tyrion now is trying the inside line. He might be trying what Steinmiller's doing to see if it has any benefit. Also, that car on the part of Tyrion is all over the place. He's wiggling through these turns like no one's business. And that must be because of the spin or the half spins we've seen earlier. The tires just might be wearing down quicker.
Johnson, Christopher Morse Jr. battling for sixth, give the spot to the 3. Off of turn 4 is now Jeff Green, and Seth Harrelson close in on the 38 of Shane Tyrion. Now, in terms of what we've been seeing here with Hank Steinmiller running the bottom, I think that maybe it's also him trying to make sure that he doesn't hit the wall off corner exit. You talk about Jeff Green flirting with that wall every time he exits out of 2 and 4, but I want to cast your memory back, and I'm trying to remember which track it was, and I can't pull it in. But I remember we had a race where tire wear was a huge concern. We saw a number of drivers during the course of a long green flag run actually blow their right fronts. Steinmiller was a driver who benefited from a caution coming out, but he was down in the single digits of percentage left on that right front. He was moments away from a tire going down. With how hard he's driving it into these corners, I mean, you can clearly see it here, and he's having to compensate by the car drifting way up to the outside wall, especially off of turn 4. Would that be wearing down that right front? Would that be a chief concern for a driver that we know in the past has been very hard on the right front tire?
I think the race you're referring to is the most recent Charlotte race, I think, because I remember that everyone was blowing tires on that particular race in the first half of the race before they started backing off a little bit. But to today's race, absolutely, it's going to put in some pressure. But something that I've noticed that he's been doing that these other drivers aren't, and they might want to start doing, is Hank Steinmiller is backing off the entry of the turn quite a bit. He's off the throttle a good half second before everyone else is, and just kind of letting it float through the turns and then easing back into the throttle on the way out of corner exit. And that's how you're able to save some tires. You're also able to save a little bit of fuel by doing that. And he's just letting the car naturally take the course it wants to. And that's how he's been able to kind of diamond these turns. He's not sticking to the inside line on entry and exit. He's letting the car just rotate through and then not applying any throttle until after it's gone around. And then that's when you put the power down and he's able to pull away. So yeah, it might be putting some more wear on the front tires, but at the same time, because he's been backing off so much, it's actually saving quite a bit as well. As you see that I think that Tyrion pushed it too far as he's gotten the wall and he's gotten Green by, and now he's going to let Harrelson go by.
Yeah, all of a sudden the handling very much so going away on that 38. Saw the couple of times he tried to gather that race car back up about 10-15 laps ago. Gotta wonder if that's playing into the fact that he is falling off the longer this run goes on. Now Jake Hounshell passes him for 4th. Christopher Morse Jr. looks to pick up a spot here. So drop Shane Tyrion, who was about 10, 15 laps ago, running down Hank Steinmiller for the race lead. He's now made a departure from the top 5.
Yeah, and he's going to have to figure out a way to save his tires until the next round of stops in order to really use that 38 machine to its advantage. Now, he might have been testing the short run capabilities of his car, thinking that they might have another quick yellow, but a lot of the drivers that had problems before they dropped out obviously have DNF from the race, so maybe the chances of a yellow coming out now might be a lot slimmer, given the fact that there's less cars on the track that could potentially have that happen. So I don't know. Whatever he was doing, it didn't work. He's caught back up to the back end of Christopher Morse Jr., but I don't think he's got enough in that car to be able to pass anybody, especially not the way that he's been trying to do it on the outside. I think he's going to have to duck down to the inside at some point. But I want to ask you a question. We've gone all season long. We've had some great races. We have some great moments. I want to.
Oh, yikes!
Speaking
of, for the wall.
He might be the yellow.
Well, if he doesn't come back up on the track, which he's headed for, that might be a caution, and it is.
Well, the commentator's curse got the guy who was hoping for a caution, and unfortunately, he was the caution.
Third caution of the day. Second time that turn 2 has been the area of the caution flag coming out. The most recent caution prior to this with Jackson McLaren also was over in the second corner, and Shane Terrian, who tonight was looking for his 3rd win on the season to close out the year on what was a part-time schedule, brings out this yellow flag on lap 58.
I think that was just a result of the tires going away and running the outside line. I think he just got a little piece of the wall out of the exit of 2, and actually he was spinning before. I don't think he ever touched the outside wall.
I think you're right. Definitely was out of shape before he even got to the exit of the corner. Well, I mean, in terms of himself, he's very lucky that he hit with the driver's side just nearing the end of that safer barrier. He didn't actually hit the Armco there a little bit further down the second half of the back straightaway, but nonetheless, doesn't matter if you hit Armco or if you hit safer barrier, it's going to do damage to your race car, and that's going to be some left side damage he'll have more than likely for the remainder of this race, depending on how well they can buff that thing out.
I wonder how much that's going to affect the suspension as well. He took a huge shot to the left side, the left wheel, the left rear wheels especially. That might have knocked something completely out of whack in the back end. He's actually not pitted this time by.
Might be pitting this next time around, perhaps as the penalty car.
Perhaps, yeah. Oh, check out who's going to beat everybody off of pit road. Jake Hounshell is going to get the #1 spot off of pit road.
And that was with a 4-tire pit stop. Man, that 0-2 team was on it as he spent about 2.2 seconds less in his pit stall than second place Hank Steinmiller.
Wow, that's incredible. They were on point. That was Red Bull levels of pit stop. That was incredible. And now the new leader is going to have a dominating pit stop lead over Hank Steinmiller as he gets out second place. Jeff Green is going to come out in third place. Shane Terrian is now coming down pit road. So Cooper Johnson's moved up a spot as well. He beat Christopher Morse Jr. off pit road to take a fourth place, and then Morse Jr. will start in fifth place at the end of this caution cycle.
Bear this in mind too, Anthony. This is going to be the first time in 60 laps that Hank Steinmiller will not have the benefit of clean air. He's going to have somebody in front of him because he started this race from the pole position, was out in front leading, didn't matter who was running in second place. Now he's going to have somebody in front of him here taking the air off of his nose. We'll have to see just how good that 63 is in traffic because we know he's very good when he's out in front.
Absolutely. And how would it be for Jake Hounshell gets the lead off of a lightning fast stop? He could potentially go on a tear and has the chance to win this race. That would be a great morale boost. Winless so far, but you never know. It's the last race of the season. He might try to pull something out that he hasn't so far this season, get this win. The thought I was going to make before we had the 38 spin around is we've had a long season. We've had a lot of great races. We've had some really fun moments. What was one of your favorite moments this season? It's been a long one, and it might take a little bit for you to remember it, but what was one of the things that stood out to you the most this season?
Well, I mean, the first one that jumps to my mind has to be the season opener at Daytona. I mean, my gracious, to see the top 6 all wrecking there, through 3 and 4. Cooper Johnson at that point had actually wrecked going into turn 3, got the thing recovered and drove through all the mayhem out of turns 3 and 4 to be able to pick up that victory. So that's the one that jumps to the forefront of my mind. But I think maybe if I have to look in terms of an overall race, probably one of my favorite ones would have to be back at Bristol, where we ended up seeing the tire strategy. It looked like nobody was going to be able to top Hank Steinmiller, and somehow, some way, the undercut was able to get Gerald Campbell that victory. I mean, very rarely we're up here in the commentators booth. We kind of just based off what we see, try and make predictions and whatnot. A lot of times we'll be saying, the short pit strategy is going to work, and it usually just evens itself out. That was one of the rare occasions where we end up seeing the short pit actually work, the fresh tires actually work, and actually put a driver in victory lane.
Absolutely. I'll tell you mine after we go back to green. We'll set you up the way that they're going to run. It's going to be Jake Hounshell, Hank Steinmiller on the front row, Jeff Green, Cooper Johnson the second row, and Christopher Morse Jr. and Seth Harrelson now will make up the third row on the restart. Shane Tyrion has officially retired from the race, taking that 38 behind the wall. There's no way he was going to be able to fix that car in enough time and not go multiple laps down, so he's decided to call it quits, which is good for Robert Kenny, because now Robert Kenny has the potential to get a top 10 this race as he's still on the racetrack. Green flag back in the air. Jake Hounshell, whoa, goodness, and there goes Green.
Jeff Green, after they were 3 wide, Cooper Johnson, I think, spun the tires, made contact with the 2, and Green has made contact with the inside wall. Down there on the apron of turn 1, gets the thing refired and drives away from the incident. No caution to save the 2000 Xfinity Series champion as the top 2 side by side through 3 and 4.
Steinmiller on the bottom, Hounshell on the outside, trying to make it work, but Steinmiller again on the inside, just too strong, gets the pass done, and will lead here under our third restart, but no, count out Hounshell, he's still there. He might try to mirror drive with Steinmiller, try to put down a similar lapses. Now he's sticking right with him, but don't look now. You got the Christopher Morse Jr., and you've got Seth Harrelson with a train of cars coming up to catch them.
Jackson McLaren in the 7, who we saw sliding off of turn 2 down the back straightaway to bring out the second caution of the day. He's now made his way back up into the top 5, so keep an eye on him as he's looking for his first win of the season, actually first win of his G-Force Vintage Cup Series career.
And I want to make a correction. Robert Kenny is not on the racetrack. He's actually not officially retired from the session, but you could basically say that he has retired. He's just sitting on pit road, so I want to make that correction. So every driver that's running on the racetrack right now is guaranteed a top 10 with Shane Tyrion's exit. So this is going to be good morale boost for these drivers that have been able to survive, but definitely Robert Kenny, I feel like he's missing an opportunity. He has a chance to get a top 10. He's got laps to do it, but I understand that car is too damaged to continue on. Battle for second now between Hounshell and Morse. It just looks like the Hounshell doesn't have the pace to keep up with the leader, or try to battle with Morse as he slides right up the racetrack and gets right in the way. That could be some contact. That's close. I think they got away with it, though.
Boy, great camera shot there down the back straightaway, showing you just how close it was. The back bumper of the 0-2, the front bumper of the 3. Might have barely been able to fit a sheet of paper in between the two as the 0-2 gets awfully loose off that corner. Morse gets loose as well. I think all those 3 cars, Hounshell, Morse, and Harrelson, were all loose off of turn 4.
He's definitely parking the bus in the middle of the turns, trying to hold this second place, and he's doing it on the outside line. Everyone running the middle to outside line. No one running the Steinmiller line, which is right down in the white line. So far, Hounshell continues to stay in second place. Morse trying to figure out a way to get around the 0-2, not really finding a way to do it yet.
Still that battle for that second position. Throw a blanket over second, back through 5th as Jackson McLaren now enters into the vicinity. Halfway through tonight's last call 200 at Atlanta. 9 drivers still running, all on the lead lap. Jeff Green, of course, hoping a caution comes out to give him a little bit of saving grace after the restart. Spinning of the tires, Morse Jr. really loose there off of turn 2 as he tries to get to the left rear quarter panel of Hounshell, not able to do it this time into turn 3. So as these guys for the moment inside the top 5 mind their P's and Q's, let's go back to the questions that we were talking about there under pacing. Anthony, your favorite moment on the season?
So excluding the Daytona opener, I think that we can say that one is definitely going to be one of the top moments, but my favorite top moment or top race in general was way early in the well, it was kind of midway through the first half of the season at Phoenix. The race
Oh, yeah.
between Ryan Lutz and Blaine Atkin, that was an intense race. At the time, both of them had the same amount of wins, and they were trying to see who the better man was. And it came down to a final. The whole race had just been back and forth between the two of them. We saw battling throughout the entire race, and then it came down to a last couple of lap restart. And we saw that Lutz and Atkin drove down to the inside line, trying to throw a block. Didn't work, and Atkin got dumped, and Lutz almost lost the race to Campbell. And then Campbell ended up losing the race to Lutz after he regathered and was able to still get to the finish. And I think that was one of the defining moments for Ryan Lutz, is proving that you might be able to try to take me out, but I'll still win the race. That was probably one of the green to finish, one of the most intense races that we've seen all season long.
Both drivers weren't necessarily happy with each other at the end of that one, but you're right, it certainly made for a very exciting finish in the closing stages of that one. I was just watching Hank Steinmiller, and all of a sudden it hit me. We're at Atlanta. There's one guy that we know of in the NASCAR Cup Series that is able to hook the bottom of the race.
Sorry to cut you off, but Morse and Houndshell got contact, and Houndshell almost went around, but he saved it. There might have been almost some contact. That might have been some retaliation on Houndshell.
I think that absolutely was, because the last couple of laps, Morse has almost been pushing Houndshell into the corner, trying to have him go faster than he wanted to. And I think you're right. I think that Houndshell might have been thinking about going up there and maybe giving a little bit of a bump to the 3 car. We'll have to keep an eye on this if he does get back up into the same neighborhood as the Season 1 champion.
Wow, that intense. And now we've got, speaking of that, look who we've got running first and second. Hank Steinmiller didn't quite make it last season. Just lost out to Christopher Morse Jr. Well, guess who's running in second place? Christopher Morse Jr., the guy who won last season, just outside of this season. So it's kind of the two best drivers so far these last 2 seasons duking it out. We could see a battle of a former champion, a newly champion to be. This sets up Season 3 quite well.
You know, we talked about the events of Phoenix, and that could actually be a perfect segue into another thing here tonight that could happen. The opportunity to maybe settle scores of things that may have happened in the past season. And you know, there's nothing on the line here tonight except that final trip to victory lane. If you kind of feel that it's 1-0 in favor of your opponent, you can maybe even the score here tonight. And who knows, maybe even as we saw right there with Christopher Morse Jr. and Jake Houndshell, it could be something from 10 races ago. It could be something from 10 laps ago.
Absolutely. We've had a lot of great rivalries throughout this season. Obviously, Atkin and Lutz is one of the best rivalries we have had so far this season, but don't count out the other rivalries we've had earlier this season. We saw that for a little bit, it was Campbell versus Whitendorf as they found themselves on the racetrack a number of times. James Roth had gotten into a bit of a rivalry with one of the other mid-running cars that I believe doesn't race anymore. I think it was... Can't quite remember who it was, but James Roth was in a bit of a rivalry with a couple of drivers as there was some fallout from the first Rockingham race, the second race of the season, ended up carrying over a number of races. And you just take into consideration that these cars at the beginning of the season were almost impossible to drive at some of these tracks, especially given the fact that the tires and the way that they handled was ridiculous when you try to do it at the speeds that they were doing. And then all of a sudden, the update made it so much easier to drive at the expense of tire wear. But you think about all those battles that happened in the first half of the season, how much of it was them intentionally doing it? How much of it was just them trying to collect the car and ended up collecting somebody else? But either way, it made for some great storylines in the first half of the season that still carried over in the second half of the season.
Yes, the big question of whether it was driver versus driver or driver versus car, and innocent victims collected up as Morse Jr. I think may have hit the wall there, may have brushed it through 3 and 4. You talk about rivalries. I mean, who'll forget the beginning of the season, the rivalry between Kyle Johnson and Bo Brady. I mean, those were 2 guys you had to keep your eye on just about every single week for about a 3-4 week span near the beginning on the year. But I was going to mention about that 63 of Hank Steinmiller running the bottom. all of a sudden, I realized it's a la Kevin Harvick. Remember when Harvick, the old racing surface in Atlanta, he was the guy that was able to run the inside line when nobody else could. That's why nobody was able to catch him. I think we could call Hank Steinmiller Kevin Harvick here tonight because he's been the only one that's been able to run the shorter way around the racetrack and actually maintain or gain speed on the competition behind him.
And doing it without burning his tires out, which is more important for a long run. So kudos to him for being able to figure out the formula for running the inside line. As behind him, actually more than a second behind him, now a battle for second place is back brewing is Christopher Morse Jr. and Jake Hounshell. Let's not forget, a few laps ago, Christopher Morse Jr. more than used the chrome horn to get rid of Jake Hounshell for second place. Well, Houndshell's caught back up. How much you want to bet that he hasn't forgotten and he is more than willing to use his own?
You got to wonder him getting back up to the 3. Is this the case of the 3 backing off to save his tires, or was Houndshell seeing red and making his way back up to the 3? We'll have to wait and see here as Hapa Carling separate those two. Then you got a 3-way battle, actually a 4-way battle for the 4th position. Jackson McLaren, Seth Harrelson, Cooper Johnson, Mike Tellier. In all honesty, right here are the final drivers that have a shot of winning this race, the cars that are up to speed. James Goshen off the pace back there as he had a very lengthy stay on pit road under the last caution. He runs in 8th, and Jeff Green, of course, as we documented that issue there on the restart, spinning down to the inside wall. He is currently 32 seconds behind the race leader, 23 seconds behind the next car of James Goshen, hoping and praying for a caution, but oh no, there's the payback! There's the payback! Morse Jr., he gets hit by McLaren. Harrelson's in it as well. The payback has been given, courtesy of Jake Hounshell.
And that's the caution that Jeff Green was hoping for at the expense of a lot of wrecked race cars. But yeah, absolutely. In the same fashion, didn't even hook him, just overdrove turn 3, did Houndshell, which is exactly what Morse did earlier. But the difference is, it seems to me that Morse might have put the brakes on.
Go back and take a look, and obviously there's going to be some that are going to be of one opinion, some of a different opinion, but I think the thing we can all agree on, so unfortunate that so many drivers who were running up here at the front with cars still in pristine condition, the 7 of McLaren, the 07 of Harrelson, the 14 of Cooper Johnson, all innocent victims in this.
Absolutely. Everybody basically running behind them except for a select few have ended up with some sort of damage because of this. And that's the danger of running the outside line all race long, is that if you have a crash like this happen in a turn, the place that the cars are going to go is the outside line. If you're running the outside line the whole time, then unfortunately that's where the blockade's going to be. And there is no doubt about it. Absolute ran him over through turn 3, which, to be fair, is exactly what happened, except the opposite a few laps ago. The outcome so much different, though.
And again, final race of the season, so it's not as if there's upcoming races on the schedule where you may end up getting parked. Here it is on board with Houndshell, and you talked about the fact of possibly the 3 getting on the brakes there. I did notice a little bit of a slowage there with those rear tires. It's hard to tell here from the perspective of the 02, but I'm almost wondering if maybe he got on the brakes knowing that the shove was coming. So that way, if he did get shoved, he'd be able to try and at least get the car pointed in the right direction and not have those innocent victims involved. But, there's only 2 people that know both sides of the story, and it's both of those cars, the 3 and the 02.
Absolutely. And this is going to be, like you said, it's not like they have a race that they're going to next week that you can have the fallout of. We're going to have to wait until next season before the fallout happens, if there is any, because there might not be that much to remember from this race for these two. They might, but they might have cooled down quite a bit by the time season 3 starts. So, hey, Jake Hounshell, barely any damage out of that. He's going to come out in 3rd place. James Goshen's going to come out in 4th. Johnson has come back out on the racetrack. Of the drivers that were collected first, he's going to restart 5th. McLaren has also come back out. Jeff Green is thankful that the caution came out when it did, because Steinmiller was closing in on him. He only had a few laps left before Steinmiller was going to catch him, so he remains on the lead lap. Seth Harrelson, Christopher Morse Jr., unfortunately, still on pit road. That might be day done for both of them, as now Harrelson 1 lap down, Morse 2 laps down. Somebody who has come back, or he did for a little bit, was Robert Kenny. He came back on the track for a second. He's now come back down to pit road. Again, he has the potential to get a top 10 if he comes back on track and runs a few laps, because the next guy Shane Tyrion's 19 laps ahead of him. So if he just runs 19 laps, he's got a top 10. So might be thinking about running it towards the end of the race when he doesn't have to continue to stay out. But we'll have to keep an eye on that as we stack them up. Steinmiller, Tellier's coming back down pit road.
We'll see what the strategy is here for the 97. Saw Jeff Green and Cooper Johnson. They came back down pit road. Oh, Jeff Green might be out of the race. Oh, just got that caution to keep him on the lead lap. I noticed him cutting through the infield grass. He did not take the pit road entry there the last lap around, and that might have been an indication that he was getting ready to call it quits. I'm almost wondering if maybe he came down pit road, checked to see how much damage he got from that incident, and just decided, you know what, this thing is too off the pace to be able to win this race. Might be calling it an early evening. And I believe the 02 of Jake Hounshell has been parked.
That's a black flag for the 02. Well, I mean, fair on the admins. It definitely deserves the black flag, but I think more or less because of the cars that were collected, that deserves the black flag. But here we are, final race of the season, and we've got a handful of drivers that you wouldn't expect to be up in the top 5, running in the top 5, including a very stricken car of Jackson McLaren restarting in second place. But we'll set them up for you. Steinmiller, McLaren, Goshen, Tellier, and Johnson. That's your top 5. Seth Harrelson is going to restart 7th. We'll make that 6th now as Houndshell's gone out of the race, and Christopher Morse Jr. continues to sit on pit road. But realistically, we've only got maybe 2 cars that are fully up to speed, Steinmiller and Tellier. As we're back under green, there goes Steinmiller.
Cooper Johnson might be a little bit of an X factor in this one, because when he was involved in the wreck, he got sideswiped by Seth Harrelson, but not much more contact outside of that. So that car might potentially still be up to speed. We'll have to wait and see. Seth Harrelson in that 07, you can see they've got the front end kind of put back together, but he nosed it into the outside wall, so I'll be surprised if that car has a lot of long run speed left in it, as he and Cooper Johnson look to split James Goshen in the 85. Tellier's going to clear for second place, albeit already a full second, more than that now, at the start-finish line behind Hank Steinmiller. Update as well on the other drivers involved. Christopher Morse Jr., he's returned to the track, but he is 4 laps down. He'll be moving up to 7th in the next couple of laps. And Robert Kenny, you talked about him, had that lengthy stay on pit road because he got the engine repaired, which you have to spend about half an hour on pit road for that to take effect. But he's back out there, so he is more than likely, if he can complete the remaining 48 laps, going to be finishing this race up inside the top 10 in the season finale.
He's probably going to get an 8th place position if he can indeed do so in the amount of times left in the race, or the amount of laps left in the race, because Morse will pass both Houndshell and Green for 7th, and that means that Kenny will be able to finish tonight in 8th place. And if you had said that earlier in the race after he got his damage, then you probably would have been laughing. But now he's got a legitimate chance of making it in. So we'll keep an eye on the 34's progress. We'll also keep an eye on the 97's progress. As of the 2 leaders, he is up to speed as well with Hank Steinmiller, Cooper Johnson as well. He's up to speed a little bit. I think that car actually, as much as he got damaged or as little as he got damaged, like you said, he was able to get it fixed. Might be slightly off the pace as compared to Steinmiller and Tellier, but still a very competitive car. And James Goshen, I'm surprised that Goshen's been able to stay this quick. He might have almost lost it off of turn 2, but we'll ignore that, as he is continuing to run in this 85.
Sometimes you have to be fast, other times you just have to be lucky. James Goshen made it through all of that carnage in 3 and 4, passed a lot of drivers that have been running in front of him during the course of this race, but that car relatively clean. He's got some damage on the right side. He has gotten the outside wall a couple of occasions here, but again though, been able to keep that thing in one piece, log all the laps, and he's looking for the benefits here tonight. Goshen coming into this race 8th in the overall standings, 9 finishes up inside the top 10, but he's looking for only his 2nd top 5 on the year.
Indeed he is. So See, well, he's definitely able to get one now, given the fact that all the top five are on the lead lap, and sixth and seventh are multiple laps down. So this might be the day for another top five. As in front of him is 07 of Harrelson, which is one of those drivers multiple laps down. In fact, there's only 3 drivers on the racetrack right now that are multiple laps down. Everyone else has retired from the race. Ooh, that could have been bad for Harrelson as he saved it. Goshen will go along by. If I was Harrelson, I would probably back off a little bit and not try to drive that car so much as he almost got into contact with the 85, but I think he's backed out of it. That car heavily damaged. One of the fastest cars throughout the whole night, I might add, was Harrelson. Was able to really make the outside line work. One of the best drivers on the outside line, and unfortunately, nothing to show for it now as he's got quite a bit of right side damage. But running a lap down, might as well just kind of put it in cruise control. There's nothing really to gain by running as hard as he is. Might as well just run the laps out, and if something else happens, then you might be able to pick up some spots. And at least finish in the. I mean, you're guaranteed a top 10. Maybe try to get a top 5 if you can. If one of these drivers have a problem, so still everything to play for.
Yeah, the landscape of this race has definitely changed. A lot of drivers that were up inside of the top 5 or 6 in the first half of this race now find themselves either damaged off the pace or in the garage area. You've got Jeff Green, who was up in second, third place pretty much the entirety of the beginning of this one. He's out in 9th. Shane Tyrion, who had worked his way up to second place, he's in the garage area in 10th. You also have Christopher Morse Jr., who is making a charge to the front. He is 4 laps down in 7th, and you already alluded to it there with Seth Harrelson, that 07, currently 1 lap down in the 6th position. It's changed the landscape of the top 5 for sure, and a guy that has benefited has been Mike Tellier in that 97. Now, obviously, in terms of lap times right now, he is not closing on Hank Steinmiller for the race lead, but he's only made a limited number of starts here during the course of the latter half of this schedule, and en route for the best finish of his G-Force career.
Absolutely. Came, like you said, came into the season late and it had been consistent. Has been running extremely well, given the fact I don't think that Mike Tellier has been particularly well known for these cars. When he came in, I don't think he's had much experience in the 87s, but thankfully he came in at a perfect time because a lot of drivers were making their debuts kind of midway through the season, and we had a very competitive midway Charlotte race, the longest race of the season, that involved quite a few drivers that came in as a one-off that were able to really change the landscape of the top 10. But Tellier came in shortly after that, and ever since doing that, he's been a consistent runner in the top 10 and top 5. And this 97 car has had speed, and it's almost another one of those situations of a what if. What if he had come in and ran the full schedule at the beginning of the year and ran through? I think he was preoccupied with another series at the time, might not have been able to dedicate the time to do it, but same. I mean, it still holds true. This is a driver that could have changed the entire landscape of the season if he had made the start earlier in the season.
We watched Robert Kenny down there in the apron, and obviously, while I don't wish hardship to any driver, it is actually quite fun to watch those drivers that come down, get the engine repaired, come back out and pick up the spots, because it's fun to watch them make their way up the grid. He was 15th about 10 laps ago. He's now up to 12th and closing in 4 laps from now of taking the 11th position away from Randy Koken. To your point, Anthony, with the amount of laps left, he could make his way up as high as 8th place here tonight for a car that sat on pit road for about half an hour, 45 minutes, as Cooper Johnson gets the wall back there out of turn 2 in that 3rd position. Real quick on the point of Mike Tellier again, too. I mean, we just came on the air here off the heels of the TNR Master Millwright Big Block Series that Mike Tellier is a part of. That's where those modifieds swing the back end out high, wide, and handsome. You gotta wonder if coming into the older surface of Atlanta here, where we've seen that old looseness, the back end wanting to snap on with these 87 cars, if that gave him a little bit of an edge here in knowing what these cars were gonna do here tonight.
The only difference is you put them on you put them on tarmac. You don't put them on dirt. But yeah, he feels right at home with these cars. I was talking to him at one point earlier when he made his debut, and I think it was when we were interviewing him at one point, and he said that it really didn't feel much different than a dirt car running, except the only difference, much more horsepower and a lot heavier. Other than that, it was pretty similar. So not at all surprised that he was able to make that. And I think that's kind of why we saw that Michael Blanton had some extremely good luck and extremely well skilled races at the beginning of the season, because again, it was the same deal. And then you notice when the update happened with these cars, where they became more tight than they were in the first half. That's when you saw some of these drivers kind of fall off a little bit. You saw that Blanton used to run it extremely loose and go into these turns with a high rate of speed, and then it just kind of hold on to it through the turns. All of a sudden, he couldn't do that, so he had to relearn how to drive the car. He was used to driving dirt. Mike Tellier has been able to adapt, because I don't think he knew what these cars drove before the update, so this is all he knows. So these cars, speaking of sideways, wow, that was a fantastic save. And Cooper Johnson now going to go around for second place, and this is big for Cooper Johnson. Teammates leading the race. Now he's in second place. Mike Tellier trying to regather it. I think it's a great day for this this championship that was still yet to be decided, but I think that it's all been decided for us.
Yeah, with five drivers on the lead lap and 2 of them out of CRM, looks very unlikely that they are going to lose the Owners' Championship. So they're going to kind of sweep the weekend here at Atlanta, with Steinmiller winning the Drivers' Championship and CRM winning the Owners' Championship. And we've been talking about his teammate, but let's get a little bit of love here to our Daytona with Cooper Johnson, because, again, we kind of have hammered this home all season long, with people possibly saying, he was right place, right time at Daytona. It was a fluke win, but he has followed it up during the course of the season to show that he has been champion caliber material. Looking at the stats coming into tonight, he of course had that win at Daytona. 2 times he sat on the pole. 9 times he finished inside the top 10, which is 3rd highest of drivers in that stat, and he leads drivers in most top 10s on the year, 19 coming into this race, and he was only 101 points behind his teammate Hank Steinmiller. Granted, Steinmiller had the benefit of 2 more victories than Cooper Johnson, but the consistency has been there for the 14 car as well.
Absolutely. It has undoubtedly been one of the best drives that we've seen this season, save for obviously Hank Steinmiller, who is the points leader. But if you had taken Cooper Johnson after that initial win at Daytona and you kind of use that as a benchmark, I don't think that it was an accurate measurement of how skilled this driver really is. And he has proven week after week that he deserves to be in the top 5 and even the top 3 in the point standing. So for all the naysayers, he's definitely proved them wrong. Second place, a solid second place in the standings, and he did it by being consistent. So too did the teammate that's leading the championship. So, and I would be remiss if we didn't talk about him more, because we never really got a chance to before he made an unfortunate, well, he's not exited the race, but he's still running, although not on the lead lap anymore. But Christopher Morse Jr., we have to give credit to the former champion. He's been running consistently all season long. Now, the first half of the season is a bit shaky for him. He came in with the weight of being the previous champion on his shoulders. A lot of drivers gunning for his spot. Certainly taking it to him early in the race or in the season was Blaine Atkin, the likes of John Weitendorf and the like, Gerald Campbell as well. And then later in the season, we saw Christopher Morse start to make the charge that he did last season back again. He didn't quite get it this time. He's had a lot of wins. In fact, like you said, I think he has the most wins this season so far. It just wasn't enough. He wasn't as consistent as the 2 in front of him. So, but again, championship caliber, proving that the championship he got last season wasn't a fluke, and proving that he deserves to be in the conversation for championships going forward as well.
Not necessarily certain, but I believe, I can't remember which race it was. I remember that Chris Morse Jr. was actually under the weather as well, and was not able to partake in a race. But also, one thing that we didn't talk about coming into tonight, drivers did have 1 drop week that they could use. And what that basically is you can take a week where your worst finish was, completely erase that off the board, and then the points get reformatted based off of that updated information. And that is why Steinmiller came into this race with the championship already locked up. As a matter of fact, it's back-to-back seasons where the driver that was leading the points coming into the season finale, as long as they took the green flag, they were going to lock the championship up. The same deal was for Christopher Morse Jr. last season. So far in 2 seasons, we've got to really have a battle for the championship. Again, it comes down to consistency, and that's what Morse was able to do last season. That's what Steinmiller was able to do this season, and we're getting ready for the exclamation point. There's no doubt about that, because not only has Steinmiller got himself in a position to finish out the year with his 4th win on the season, a championship year. But he's dominated this race. I mean, we've had a couple of guys be able to get to his back bumper, but nobody has been able to put that 63 in their rearview mirror.
Other than pacing laps, he's led every single lap this race so far. That even includes the restart where he didn't start as the leader, but he was able to make the pass before we got to the line. So every green flag lap that's been run so far has been under the 63's hood, or over the 63's hood, I should say. So yeah, the consistency tonight, and he's really put this mile-and-a-half package together. We always saw him running well at the short tracks, but he in the late half of the season, we have really seen him step up the mile-and-a-halves, which we used to assume would go straight to drivers such as Christopher Morse Jr. or when he raced Blaine Atkin. But now the script's kind of been flipped a little bit, and I want to make a point. And I just noticed this. He's not got a second lead anymore. In fact, the driver that I thought wouldn't have been able to catch it because of the damaged car is starting to reel him in within a half a second now, and that's Cooper Johnson. I don't know when that happened.
Yeah, Johnson's lap times have been really good the last couple of laps. That time by, he was a full half-second faster than Hank Steinmiller, and he's putting the pressure on his teammate. He wants a bookend season, does Cooper Johnson. He wants to win the first and last race on the year. He took second place momentarily away from Mike Teller, who we saw there on that replay. Looks like he may have been bringing it to pit road to possibly park the 97, so he'll probably finish this race in the 7th position tonight. Not certain why he would have parked it this early, as he was en route for a podium finish here this evening, but that now moves James Goshen up into the top 3.
Now, I want to bring back a point that you mentioned earlier in the race, as the pass for the lead is easily made by Cooper Johnson. Obviously, these two are teammates, so they're not going to race each other as hard as they might have if they weren't teammates, but still.
Oh, there's debris there on the back straightaway. I don't know if you see it there, but somebody's front end is actually sitting on the back stretch. I'm not sure who that belonged to.
Could that be Tellier?
Could possibly be, yeah.
I'm going to see if I can find out if it's Tellier or not.
I'm not certain if we just saw it on our end or if other people saw it as well, but there was, looked like a piece of the front end. I'm thinking it's Jackson McLaren. McLaren's about to go a lap down now. He's off the pace on the apron. I think it might have been him. He might have gotten the wall off of 2 and left some debris behind on the back straightaway.
Could potentially have been that. I'm looking to see if it was... Oh, I bet that might have been what took Tellier out. He might have ran over it.
Wow.
Because Tellier, he was running consistently, and then all of a sudden in the back straightaway, it looked like there was a bit of a bobble going down the back stretch, and then all of a sudden he made a abrupt dive onto pit road. Like it was a last-minute decision to come down to pit road. Didn't fully get it stopped in enough time, and hit the commitment cone on the way in. I think that was day done for him. It must have done something. It might not have been that, but I think you're right on the part of it might be somebody else's debris. But now with a commanding lead over his teammate and continuing to grow the lead is Cooper Johnson. And I want to bring back a point that you had said. Maybe Hank Steinmiller running the bottom of the racetrack was doing more damage to his tire than if you ran the outside line. Well, that might have come into play. This is the longest green flag run we've had all race long. Haven't really gotten a gauge of how your tires are going to feel late in a run. Maybe Steinmiller used all his stuff on the inside line. That's why Johnson was able to get around, because he's been consistently using the outside line to his advantage and not having to wear the tires so thin in order to keep the speed up.
The lap times, certainly, there was a huge difference between them with Johnson and Steinmiller. I'm wondering if it could be something else as well. Steinmiller's got the championship locked up. He and Cooper Johnson running up inside of the top 2. They've got the team championship locked up. I'm wondering if this might be a team player thing here for Hank Steinmiller, saying, hey, I've got 3 trips to victory lane. I've got this championship sewn up. You haven't won since the season opener of Daytona. Let's get you up here. See if we can finish you out this season with a second win.
Hey, Johnson, this is Toto. Well, actually, Steinmiller, this is Toto. I mean, you can't, for me at least, it's hard to not make the connection between a Mercedes team order and this kind of a team order. But yeah, you might be exactly right. Cooper Johnson, again, wins the season opener and now is in a position to take this win at the end of the season, and the only driver that he had to get by was his teammate. And yeah, I think it is good sportsmanship. Like, Hank Steinmiller wins the championship. He doesn't need another win in order to do that. He's got this win. He's got this championship locked up. Cooper Johnson is in second place, so it could be. I mean, Steinmiller's not going to lose the championship by letting his teammate win the race. This might be a staged finish. This might be that. Well,
wait a minute. Wait
maybe
a minute. As soon as we're spinning conspiracy
Well,
theories here, Steinmiller pulls back up to the bumper of Johnson again.
we backed off. Backed off considerably going to turn one.
This is interesting. This is very interesting. I mean, there's still 18 laps to go. These drivers are now into about a 33-lap stint since we went back green.
This proves one thing, though. Steinmiller definitely still has the faster car.
Yes. Yes, the way that he was able to get back up there to Cooper Johnson says to me he let the 14 on by. I'm almost wondering if maybe these two are just in ride mode right now and saying, hey, let's hold on to our spots, let's keep the interval the way it is, and then let's make it a battle in the closing stages.
I wouldn't hold on to it too much, though, because you still got James Goshen running on the racetrack, although not an immediate threat. He's 7 seconds down and not gaining anything. So, yeah, I think you're right. Ride mode definitely here, as it's actually opened up 7.5 seconds in the span of a straightaway. So, definitely do Goshen much slower. Yeah, this is your battle for the lead, and whether they might be saving this stuff. Now, here's an interesting strategy. Perhaps they're trying to stretch it to the end of the race without having to stop again, because their lap times have gone off considerably. I wonder if this might also be strategy.
Well, the 07 of Seth Harrelson was just on pit lane for what looked like a regularly scheduled pit stop. So, to your point, it could very well be the case of maybe being close on fuel to make it to the conclusion. Steinmiller, who's been out in front, may have let the 14 come on by, have him out there creating the draft for the 63, so that way he can coast into the corner, save a little bit of fuel, so both those cars can make it back to the start-finish line. But then you have to wonder, when both these guys are good on fuel, then when is the go button pushed, and when does Steinmiller say, okay, well, enough, I've got enough fuel, I'm going back out the front to win this thing?
I don't know. That's the beauty. I'm enjoying. Ooh, there was a bobble from Johnson. That's a big bobble. Or was it? Did he let his teammate go by?
Now he moves to the top. Steinmiller goes by. Are we watching a race or are we watching the Russian ballet? I'm not sure, because these guys right now doing a little bit of dancing out there, a little bit of swapping of the race lead. Johnson now edges out in front. Steinmiller goes back to the point. And if these guys, now Morse Jr.'s on pit road. I think these guys are short on fuel. I think that Steinmiller and Johnson are trying to make it to the conclusion on fuel. I think this is the longest run we've had under green flag conditions so far today. So I think that's the strategy of these two guys. Get the fuel to where we can make it to the checkered flag. And with that being said, we had Harrelson on pit road. We had Morse on pit road. Where's the 85 on terms of fuel? He's running awfully low there on the back straightaway. I think he might be out. That car is slow going into 3 and 4.
If it's not out, he's definitely running incredibly conservative at the minute. Yeah, he's not coming to pit road. I bet that Goshen's trying to make it to the end of the race with what he's got. He has fallen off considerably from the two leaders. Like, we're talking about the gap opened up from 7 seconds to 20 seconds in the span of a few laps. So definitely not off the pace. He's just intentionally trying to save the fuel. I bet he's trying to stretch it to the end of the race, and he's doing it the same fashion that Steinmiller and Johnson are doing it, except what confuses me is that they have similar lap times.
Riding on board here with Goshen. I wondered if maybe
Johnson's on pit road.
Oh boy. From the second spot, apparently could not make it. He's going to come down to the attention of his crew with 12 laps to go. Hank Steinmiller, where is he at in terms of fuel? Where is James Goshen at in terms of fuel? It's hard to tell with these cars because they're so low down to the ground. It's hard to tell if they're clutching or not, but it looked like when we looked back there at the James Goshen machine, at least at the beginning point of when we were looking back at him, like he might have been clutching that car through 3 and 4.
could have been. He's definitely off the pace. He's 21 seconds behind the leader. They're both now running similar lap times again, although Steinmiller running about a second faster than Goshen. He has slowed down significantly from his best lap, which was a 33.4. Now he's running 37.2s. Definitely Goshen trying to stretch it all the way. And if he can pull this off, that will be fantastic. The bad thing for Goshen is that Johnson, having come down pit road, he's gotten full service, fresh tires, full tank, or enough fuel to make it to the end of the race at least. He's going to be able to run down extremely fast lap times. And what's bad for Steinmiller is that he's staying out, trying to stretch it for all of its worth. We're within 10 laps to go. Now, if Steinmiller has to come back down pit road, you can all but hand the race to Cooper Johnson. I don't see any way that Steinmiller is going to be able to win this race now if he has to pit.
Exactly. If he has to pit with the lap times he's running right now, he's losing time to Cooper Johnson, and then it's going to take all that time to come down pit lane, get into his pit stall, and leave pit road, and that may be with 5, 6, 7 laps to go, depending on if the 63 has to come down pit lane. I don't think that'd be enough time to run down Cooper Johnson, so this is going to be interesting. Steinmiller backed off. He ran in the draft of his teammate in the 14, but the 14 had to hit pit lane. Steinmiller, did he save enough behind Cooper Johnson to make it to the finish? He's going to have 8 more circuits around this mile-and-a-half racetrack here at the start-finish line. Goshen has backed his pace way down. I mean, he is running about almost 2 seconds slower than Hank Steinmiller, so if either one of these guys are close on fuel, Goshen may be the guy to make it to the end.
Absolutely, and he's 23 seconds behind, which is more than enough time. If Steinmiller has to come down pit roads, more than enough time to make up the position. Pit road delta here is about 40-ish seconds, 45 seconds, so that could very well be race over if Steinmiller has to pit. If anything else, if Steinmiller can make this win or make this work, then he's going to not only take the championship, but he's going to get the final race win and do it on a fuel strategy. And then we can say that he's won about every type of race so far this season. But how is it that we come down to the end of the season, all these races, every single week, in and out, we have had so many different races, so many different winners, extreme circumstances, and it comes down to a fuel mileage race with 10, or make that 7 cars on the racetrack, and one of them has just gotten to the top 10. Robert Kenny has gotten a 10th place spot. I don't think he's going to have enough time to make up any more spots, but he will get a top 10. We are within the final few laps of the season, Seth, and I honestly have no idea who's winning this race.
Just when you think you have it figured out, another curveball is thrown at you. Hank Steinmiller continues to turn faster lap times than James Goshen. That last time by, he was 9/10 of a second quicker than the 85. Now he carries a lot less speed into 3 and 4 than he's been carrying the last couple of times, and that actually, the back end wanted to step out on him there, so all of a sudden the handling going away, the rear grip going away. 5 more circuits here at Atlanta. The question is, what does his fuel look like? Goshen continues to save. Cooper Johnson, however, he's running about 8 to 9/10 faster lap times than the top 2, albeit trapped 1 lap down.
Now, here's the thing. Steinmiller, if he's able to pull this, he's gotten back going about the pace he was before he started saving. He might have made enough to do it, or maybe he got to a point where he said either, he's going to
He's going to pit road.
No, he's going to miss it.
He was trying to get to pit road, I do believe. He missed the commitment line, very slow on the front straightaway. Here comes Cooper Johnson to unlap himself. Oh my goodness, if Hank Steinmiller had been to the left side of the commitment cone, that would have been a speeding penalty.
I think he knew. I don't know if he was intending to come down or if he just got loose and almost had a penalty. Good heads-up driving to avoid going down the commitment line, but we're about to find out if he's coming down, and he is. He can't make it. He's slowing down, I think. No, he's staying out, but he's backed off considerably.
Very much so has backed off. James Goshen continuing to run his pace as Seth Harrelson gets around him. Now Cooper Johnson, 7.5 seconds behind James Goshen. He could very well snipe away second place here in the closing stages, but we're going to keep it on Hank Steinmiller, who had that heart-stopping moment out of turn 4. He's going to have 3 more miles to traverse this next time he gets back to the start-finish line. Fuel still the big concern on that machine.
Slower and slower through these turns, now running a 134 through the turn, or make that a 134 1 through the turn, just trying to hold on to it. Two laps to go in this race. Can he make? I honestly don't know if he can or not. Here comes Morse to try and get one of his laps back around the 63. And he's actually, I think, slowing up behind him. This could be a stage finish for them. So here's your former champion and your current champion. Can Steinmiller one more lap around Atlanta? That's all that's separating him from a win. Can he do it?
That last time by, he ran a lap time very similar to James Goshen. He has 26.5 seconds back to the 85. 1.5 more miles for Hank Steinmiller. I think he could coast here into 1 and 2, get back to the throttle down the back straightaway, and then coast it again through 3 and 4 and not lose time. I think he might have enough fumes in the tank to get back around. But talk about a guy who coming into this race already had the championship locked up. It certainly was no cakewalk to be able to finish out the season with the exclamation point. Out of turn 4, still under power. The last call, 200. 4th win on the season goes to your Season 2 champion, Hank Steinmiller.
And he did it by saving the car. It looked like he was trying to get to pit road, but I think what happened is the back end just washed out on him, and he just barely avoided the commitment line, and he was able to get this win. How about that? The teammates bookend the season. Cooper Johnson did it at Daytona. Hank Steinmiller's going to do it at Atlanta, and you can put a exclamation point on the championship run for Hank Steinmiller as he ties the same amount of wins with Christopher Morse Jr. for the season, and a dominant performance at the end of the season in order to take the championship. You didn't do it in Season 1, but you got it done in Season 2.
Hank Steinmiller, man, oh man, I'll tell you what. These have got to be the most excited burnouts he's done all season. He was obviously elated at Talladega. Richmond and North Wilkesboro, he was excited to be a multi-time winner, but I think this is the most excited burnout on the season, no doubt. You saw coming back to the start-finish line, Cooper Johnson was able to get around Goshen to finish second, so the CRM teammates 1-2. There's the other CRM teammate of Seth Harrelson there as well, as they'll all celebrate with Hank Steinmiller at the start-finish line. Goshen may have been out of fuel coasting across the start-finish line, but he'll get his best finish on the year in the finale, finishing up inside of the podium.
Double burnout from the two teammates on the front straightaway as both of them, again, bookend the season. Hank Steinmiller, a fantastic season. Cooper Johnson, and there you go. There's Seth Harrelson coming in, the third of this team, coming in to give congrats to the champion. I think the 63 ran out of fuel during the burnout. Absolutely. There you go. Pushing it down the front straight. Yeah, he's out. He's totally out of fuel. But and it looked like that it was going to be the way it was. Hank Steinmiller has led every single lap under green this race, didn't even falter when he had the spin with 5 laps to go, acted like it never happened, was able to continue on, and anyone sitting at home wondering how stressful that kind of situation is, that could have been a race ender for our winner tonight, but he was able to still pull out a win as his teammates are going to continue the festival without him, but definitely with him in spirit.
And again, how close was he to going to the left side of that commitment cone on pit road? If he had crossed that commitment line at the speed he was going, the game would have penalized him. It would have given him the speeding penalty, and he would have had to have served that, or else it would have given him probably a 1-lap penalty at the conclusion, and it would have been Cooper Johnson winning this race. Mere inches were the difference between Steinmiller being your winner here tonight or your runner-up.
Absolutely. I mean, it wouldn't have changed the face of the championship any, but it definitely would have taken the win away. But here's the thing. It would have been a win-win for the team as a whole, because Cooper Johnson was second. Well, he was running third, but he got second at the line. He would have gotten it over Goshen. We haven't even considered that James Goshen could have won this race, considering he didn't get past until the last lap. And if Cooper Johnson had gotten slowed up by his teammate, if he gotten anyway collected or hindered by the spin, then we could have been talking about James Goshen being our winner at the end of this one. And all of this happening with 4 laps to go.
Again, like we said, we thought we had it figured out. It looked like it was easily going to be Hank Steinmiller winning this race. All of a sudden, fuel becomes a concern. Cooper Johnson comes to pit road, gets the fresh tires. We're wondering if Steinmiller and Goshen can make it back to the start finish line. Steinmiller has that moment off of turn 4. My goodness me. This race had everything about a season finale. Even though the championship was locked up, you had to stick around and wait until that checkered flag waved to find out who was officially going to be the winner of the last call 200 as we look at the finishing results. And there are so many stories interweaved into this finishing order here, Anthony. Goshen with his best finish on the season. You've got drivers like Harlson, McLaren, Morse. These guys looked like they could have very well been contenders up there inside the top 3, but they got involved in that late contact between Morse and Hounshell. Hounshell parked for the race. You've got Jeff Green, who was a prime contender. He finishes out of the race in 9th. Mike Tellier runs over to Bree to finish 7th. Kenny, he knows that thing into the wall early on in this thing. He brings it home inside of the top 10. I mean, there was just so much that was fit into the 133 laps here tonight.
And you have drivers outside the top 10 that could have made an impact on the finish of the race, but wasn't taken out, unfortunately. Shane Tyrion finishes 11th tonight. He was one of the strongest cars throughout the entire event, and then late in the race ends up getting the inside barrier and just never was able to recover. All these drivers back behind, Michael Blanton went out early, the first retirement. Peyton Hamlet, Kevin Dinovich, Randy Koking, all these drivers came into this wanting to have the best race that they could to close out the season, but unfortunately, Atlanta got them. And this track will do things to these cars that you wouldn't expect, but it's the old surface combined with an extremely loose car. Can you imagine what this track would have been like with the way that the cars used to handle? It would have been incredibly difficult for these guys, and they still were driving it like it was the older cars. And one of the biggest stories, Christopher Morse Jr. and Jake Hounshell. Those drivers, middle of the race. First, it was Christopher Morse getting contact with Hounshell, and then later on, Hounshell repaying the favor, but unfortunately taking out more than half the front runners with him. Hounshell DNF'd from the race. Well, it was actually DQ'd from the race. Christopher Morse Jr. was able to come back and get a 6th place, but man, what would have happened if if that hadn't happened? We would have had many more cars in order to fight this win out, and it might not have been as clear cut for Steinmiller or any of these drivers.
And obviously, as well, the battle lines have been drawn in the sand. You've got to wonder what the fallout is going to be in this as well for Christopher Morse Jr. and Jake Hounshell in, the upcoming season, the new season here for the Hijinx Clothing Company Cup Series, or I think they're even planning on bringing the Grand National Series back for a second season. You've got to wonder if the bridges are going to be repaired between those two, because obviously we saw the end result of the initial contact and then the follow-up contact, and several other drivers taken out as a result in that as well. Well, let's see what these drivers have to say about tonight. Let's see if we can talk with the guy that started out the season with a W, finishes out the season 2nd in the overall points, your runner-up finisher here tonight, Cooper Johnson. Hey, Cooper, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Yeah, I got you guys.
Man, I mean, what a season you had. What a way to finish it out. Had a shot there at the end, maybe on those fresh tires, and maybe with a slip-up out of turn 4 of your teammate to maybe have a bookend season, first win and last win on the year. But, man, strategy call there. What little more do you think you could have had to be up there with Hank, maybe be able to snipe this win in the closing stages of the season?
I needed to be a little bit better on saving my tires. He had gotten out to such a lead there at the end that I knew I wasn't gonna be able to save gas and still catch him. So I figured I'd just go as hard as I could and see if I can get by him, and either hope for a caution or hope he ran out of fuel too and trying to save it. But for me, he was the best car all night. That was, nobody could touch him. He was up front for 90% of the race, and me, I enjoyed running that high line. I could run it decently well at certain points, but just couldn't consistently do it, and so for me, I needed a lot to go my way in order for me to actually beat him there at the end. And then plus I ended up having to pit. I didn't get a choice because I ended up blowing, I believe it was my right front tire, because it gave me the meatball, and So I had to come down at some point, and so I figured I'd just throw my last 4 tires on there and drive it as hard as I could and see what happens.
Well, drive it you did, and you almost was able to catch him at the end of the race. Had Stein. Now, what happened was, and you saw it happen in front of you, where he was. I don't know if it got loose or he was trying to make it on a pit road, but it could have all ended catastrophically for the 63. But it almost was. We could talk about what it almost was, but I want to ask you, from Daytona to now, you have had one of the most consistent seasons I think we've seen out of any of these drivers that have taken the green flag at any point in this season. So from then to now, what are some of the takeaways that you've had, and what are you looking for next season? Because obviously you've got speed. You were second place in the standings. You only had the one win, but if you had put together some more wins, we could be talking about you being the championship, or even possibility of the roles being reversed. So again, what are you looking forward to, and what are some of the takeaways from this season?
The biggest thing is, it's like you said, I've never really been like early on in iRacing. I wasn't really the most consistent guy, and I've been the one to beat myself most times. It's funny. Hank's the guy that usually ends up beating himself, either spinning himself out or missing his his pit road or doing something like that. And tonight, I think when he was throwing in the clutch and trying to save gas, I think he had just gotten really loose coming off of 4 and almost destroyed his race, and that probably could have got me the win. But as far as from start of the year to the end of the year, I had the greatest luck win in probably iRacing history to start the season, which was fun. But since then, it's just been about consistently running well. And for me to be able to run as consistently as I have, and to have the most top 10s by far over everybody else, and to just consistently grind away and keep myself in shooting distance of the championship from the start of the year to the end of the year, is something that I'm really proud of myself about, because like I said, I've beaten myself more times than I can count before I started this league, before I joined this league. And for me to finish second in the points to Hank, who he's definitely a lot more talented than I am, and not to beat Chris, which at the beginning of the year, my ultimate goal was to beat Chris. I said, if I can beat Chris, the guy who won the championship last year, then that's a win. And I beat Chris, and so I could take that all day.
You definitely did. Well, one point of this race that was really the turning point was the contact we saw between Morse Jr. and the 0-2 of Jay Counshell. Now, obviously a lot of drivers up there that were contending for the victory were caught up in that. You were amongst those. Was there any exchange between the two of them after that incident took place? Do you think there's going to be any fallout? And as a driver that was caught up in it, that then had to deal with that damage towards the end of the race, what was your perspective on what took place ahead of you?
Well, I know earlier we were on the chat with Jake, me, Seth, Hank, and Jake were all in the same chat together. So we were all kind of talking throughout the race, and we were kind of working together because we were all kind of in that line. We were almost just like training our, like a train running that top line. So we were all kind of working together with each other and talking to each other the whole race. And I don't remember what lap, but it was about 20 laps before that contact happened. I want to say that Jake was in front of Chris, and I think Chris kind of used up Jake a little bit on his bumper and kind of put him up into the wall a little bit, if I remember correctly. And Jake was obviously not happy about that. And, Chris has gotten on people's nerves throughout the year, and he's gotten on the Houndshell's nerves. He's gotten on my nerves one time. I know he's gotten Hank's nerves. So, we've all kind of been back and forth, and Jake, I don't know. I don't think he intentionally wrecked him. I don't, but I don't think he was really going to give him a whole lot of room there at the end, considering what happened earlier in the race. But for me, I thought I was going to miss it. I thought I was going to make it out of there and be able to just sneak by on the bottom. But I think Seth shot off of Jake down onto the down the track and ran into me. I didn't have that bad of a damage. It was only about like a minute or so, but definitely hurt as far as track position goes. And but overall, it was the reason why I finished second today. Was after that, Jake and Chris were basically done. I think Chris ended up kicking Jake because of what happened, and there were a lot of expletives traded back and forth over the chat. But overall, I mean, that's part of racing. That's going to happen all the time. Guys are going to get irritated and take each other out. We saw it at the Watkins Glen race in the Cup Series this past weekend, where guy who's in second takes out the guy who's in the lead. It's going to happen. It's happened before. It's going to happen again. So it's just racing.
Yep, absolutely. No doubt about that. Well, Cooper, I mean, obviously, thank you for the insight there, and congratulations on a second place finish to close out the season. You said your goal was to come in here and beat the defending champ. You did that definitely here this season. Congratulations on the consistency, and of course, having that victory at Daytona to hang your hat on there early on, and just keep proving to everybody that you're able to get those consistent finishes. We're now going to turn the mic over to you for some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
First of all, I want to thank you guys. You guys put on a great broadcast every single week. I watched a couple of your guys' other races that you guys do with the other series, the Dark Horse series, and I've seen some of those races. You guys do a really good job. So I want to thank you guys for sticking around throughout the entire season, a long season. Obviously want to thank Chris. I've made a lot of, this is my first season with these guys, and I made a lot of friends and gotten to know a lot of different people. And I want to thank Chris for having this league and putting it on every single week. It's been an absolute joy through all the ups and downs and all the crazy races that we've had. I've always enjoyed, every Tuesday coming down and sitting down and racing with these guys. So big thanks to him, and a big thanks to all my friends here that I've gotten to know through this entire league. I want to thank John. I know he wasn't able to finish out the season because of work and such, but I want to thank him. I want to thank Anthony for being the even reason I'm even a part of this league, and was the guy who introduced me to the league. Seth for being a great guy to talk to and absolute joy to hang out with in the chats. He's absolutely hilarious. And then, of course, Hank, who got to know a lot better throughout the entire season, and really feel like me and him have really grown, and can't wait to come back and race for him again next season.
That's Cooper Johnson. Second place tonight. Second place in the season's overall standings. Once again, congratulations, Cooper. Job well done here this season. And, of course, again, looking forward to seeing what you bring to the table. Maybe you can get one position better in next season.
Yep. Thanks, guys.
It was looking like we may not be able to get to talk with James Goshen after his best finish on the year, but he has hopped in here, so let's talk with him now. Hey, James, Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us? We'll give it another go here. James, you got us up here in the booth. Oh, we heard some sound there for a brief moment, James. We'll see if we can be able to get James sorted here. James, you might be on push to talk. I'm not certain. All right, we'll see if we can get James situated there in a moment. While he's getting that all settled out, let's see if we can give him time and talk with tonight's race winner and champion. I think the one question we're really going to be wanting to ask him is about that turn 4 incident, but let's see if we can speak with him here tonight. Had the pressure off him as far as the championship, but certainly did not have the pressure off of him, not only with that near spin, but also with fuel here tonight at Atlanta. Hey, Hank, it's Anthony and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
I got you.
Man, I mean, we saw that your car was out in front, dominating this event. I called it Harvick-esque. You seem to be the only guy that could hook that inside line here at Atlanta. But just when we thought you had this thing all sewn up, fuel started becoming a concern. So how close was it? How many more laps could you have gone before that thing ran out? Because it looked like that thing ran out of fuel when you were doing your victory burnouts.
It did. I had one more lap left in it at maybe full throttle. I accidentally saved an extra lap, but I think we had to save 4 laps. It was very, very close.
Absolutely. We were speculating what was happening in the final bit of the race, and I want to bring this up. What happened that last 4 laps? We saw that it looked like that you were trying to get to pit road, but I guess did your car just go out from under you and you were trying to hold on to it because you almost got slapped with a penalty? What was going through your mind that last restart when you spun around and was trying to hold on to the car for what was later on going to be a win?
I did not have a right rear left. That's what
Oh.
happened there, and I have no
That'll do it.
idea, no idea if that was. It obviously couldn't have been at 0 because I didn't have a penalty yet, but it was towing that line somewhere in the 4 or 5%. Because when I got out of the car, it was at 0. The rest of the tires were somewhere around 40. So probably sliding through those corners while I'm in the clutch until I'm 3/4 through the corner didn't help that right rear much. But it was absolutely at 0, and I just couldn't touch the throttle in the corners for the last 3 laps.
Yeah,
Would've-
that will do it.
I would have loved to have had like the in-car cam at that moment that took place, because I want to know how much of missing that commitment cone, being on the right side of it instead of the left side, how much was driving and how much was luck.
Mostly luck. I'd put it about 85% luck, and then that last stab at the throttle kind of kicked that front to the right side of that cone, and then it was just to try to hold it straight through the grass and not touch the throttle at all. But I would say mostly it hit that hit the apron at the correct angle to kick that thing back right for the most part.
Now, Anthony and I, we were talking about this when we came on tonight, the fact that it's been a career year for you. 3 trips to victory lane coming into tonight. You just had to take the green flag to lock up the championship. So, what was the mentality coming tonight? Was it dominate, go out there and win, or was it just be consistent?
It was just be consistent. I mean, we knew we probably had that title wrapped up there. As long I think it was as long as 27 cars didn't show up. So as soon as that green flag dropped, yeah, we were good to go. And I just wanted to have fun. It's a good group of guys we got on our team. It's a good group of guys to race with. So I was proud of the team effort between Cooper, me, and Seth. I know we had moved Seth around since Let's left about mid-season. We put Seth in on our team, and it's just been good teamwork from the whole team that second half of the season. I mean, we started to turn it on, and then when one person would have a bad race, the other ones would pick it up. And I think one of us were probably top 3 every race for the last 12 or so.
Yeah, I mean, obviously as well, we saw even here tonight, all 3 of the CRM cars with a lot of speed running up there inside the top 5 consistently. So, I mean, what does the outlook look like for you guys now into the upcoming season? Of course, we know that the Grand National Series is coming back as well. I mean, do you guys continue from here with that consistency? Do you see another CRM championship in your guys' future?
Yeah, I would like to think so. We got very consistent drivers. Seth's sometimes a little wild card. He likes to get out there and turn that thing sideways. So, but it'll get him wins too. He's very good on short tracks. He's very good at holding on to cars that are not the most stable. So I think the consistency from the team itself, like I said, when one guy misses it, usually there's others to pick it up. I think Dover's a good example of that. I think I had the lead about midway through the race and just made a dumb mistake, or that right rear blew again, and I went right in the wall. I think Cooper picked it up and finished second or something, somewhere right around those lines. So it's the overall consistency from the team. I mean, we're in communication. We know what where each other are, or where we all are, and where we need to be. So we're shooting for where our cars should be, what finishes we should get, and it's just a consistency factor.
Well, you tie for the most wins on the season, your 4th win here tonight. You win the championship. Your team gets the team championship. I mean, an overall terrific night for you, Hank. Congratulations. We're now going to turn the microphone over to you for some Victory Lane thank you, sponsors, and shoutouts.
Yeah, well, first we'll like to thank you guys for putting on the broadcasts all season. They're awesome to go back and watch. Cool to see cars sliding around, wrecking, whatever, all the stuff you didn't get to see during the race. So that's a cool thing from you guys. I appreciate that. Chris for putting the league together. The drivers in this league, we might have our scuffles here and there, but all of them are a good group of guys. Our team, Cooper and Seth, can't thank them enough. The communication, the help, everyone just on the same page for that second half of the season. It was a big reason why we turned it on so good. Sponsors there, Juicebox Pod, check them out on Spotify. They are a funny group of guys. Our other partner there with Cloud 8 Delta, they got all kinds of stuff up the East Coast. Look for them in stores, gas stations around. And that's about it. It's awesome. That second half of the season, it was quite a run for us. So I'm proud of it.
Well, we talked about it tonight. exclamation point on a career year for Hank Steinmiller goes to victory lane and hoists the championship trophy here tonight as well in the G-Force Vintage Clothing Cup Series. Congratulations, Hank, on a job well done, not only tonight, but during the course of this season. Go and enjoy that championship, well deserved.
Will do. Thank you, guys.
And we do have James Goshen now available. Got his mic settings fixed, so let's talk to our third place finisher now. James, Anthony, and Seth up here in the FRM booth again. You got us this time?
Yeah, I got you.
There we go. Well, man, I mean, congratulations on the third place run here this evening. Man, it came down to fuel. It came down to being in the right place at the right time with that big wreck through 3 and 4. You were able to do both of those. Third place here tonight. I mean, how good does that feel to be able to get your second top 5 on the season here in the finale?
I mean, it's still pretty cool to be able to finish top 5, especially within this series with these guys. I mean, it's a good group of guys to race with. With me just starting iRacing end of last year, I still got a lot to learn, but these guys have been big help in trying to teach me and help me progress. And, the top 3 was unexpected. Wasn't anticipating that. And pretty cool, though.
Yeah, you definitely was able to really stretch the legs of your car at the end of the race. I want to go back a little bit earlier when kind of the chaos was happening with Morse and Hound Show. What was kind of the strategy in order to put yourself out of the way to avoid it? I know you're considerably far back and kind of out of the way already, but it had to have been a scary moment, and it kind of set up the chance for you to get this top 3.
Right. When I was heading into that corner, I could see the smoke up in the distance, and I don't know who it was sitting sideways in the track, and I was hoping they would just stay there, and luckily they did. I think I might have caught them with the right side of the car, but it worked out. I got around them somewhat unscathed.
We've seen obviously drivers and their progression here in the series all the way back into season 1. With a performance like this tonight and the good finishes you've been able to get down the home stretch, what's the goal now for you heading into the third season?
When I got into this with the Harvick cars, my main goal was just to stay out of the way, learn, figure it out. And it's the same thing with these 87 cars. Is same goal, just stay out of the way, stay out of trouble, and just get what the track will give me. And it's just the progression is slowly there. I still got way more to learn. So I was hoping if I got top 15, cool. I was happy with that. I was satisfied with that. Then a few top 10s here and there. And the top 5 was unexpected, and tonight's race was a really big unexpected.
Well, 8th in the points coming into this race. You're going to be top 10 in the overall standings. Third place here tonight at Atlanta Motor Speedway in the season finale. Congratulations, James, on finishing out this year on a high note. We're now going to give the opportunity to thank some sponsors and do some shout-outs.
I don't really have any sponsors, but I do like to give a shout-out to Black Acid Racing. I know they haven't been on the car. I haven't been able to get them to create a scheme for the car, but Black Acid Racing is a apparel company that does custom apparel for racers and their crew. And I've been working with them in their late model stocks in real world for the last 4 seasons. So, I got to give a shout out to them for everything that they've done to help me out. And they've even tried to help me with this stuff. So I got to give a big shout out to them. I got to give a big shout out to everybody in this league. I hope all the guys in here, they're all a bunch of good group of guys. Might as well squabbles here and there, but still a good group of guys to learn from.
That's James Goshen, third place here tonight in the season finale, the last call 200 at Atlanta. Congratulations, James, and best of luck to you in the upcoming season.
All right, thank you, guys.
And as the curtain comes down on the second season of the G-Force Vintage Clothing 87 Cup Series, Anthony, it's so interesting because coming into tonight's event, didn't really know what the storylines were going to be because we already knew that the championship was locked up. We already knew that pretty much the team championship was already locked up, but it's almost like we got a little bit of everything from this entire season all in nice one little package in the finale. We ended up having some great battling all the way through the field. We ended up having controversy. We had tempers flaring. We had Cinderella stories. We had pit strategy. We had fuel strategy in the closing stages. I mean, it was basically everything you could ask for out of an Atlanta race, minus the championship being on the line.
Right, and the championship already being decided, that was one thing that we knew going into this race that was set in stone. But as you said, everything else was just left up to chance and was left up to what these drivers could do to close out their season. And it seems like Daytona was so long ago. When we started the second season of G-Force, it Daytona again. It has, while the season's flown by, it just felt like we've gone through so many changes throughout the drivers, the car itself, the way the season progressed. Obviously, we've gone from winter into summer. It's been a long season and a lot of stories going into Atlanta. Some drivers that started that could have been some of the drivers we would consider to be fighting for the championship dropped out of the series. Other drivers emerged to take the series victory. And then again, tonight we had every single thing, take the best parts from all the races throughout the season and put them into one package. And if you wanted a good example of what the vintage series was throughout the season, if this is the first time you've seen the vintage series all season long, first off, I encourage you to go back and watch some of the highlight races. Personally, one of mine is the Phoenix race early in the season, but this is what G-Force, the vintage series, was. Everything that you saw tonight encapsulates what it was. Fuel strategy, tire strategy, drivers trying to hold on to their race cars, controversy, tempers flaring, fantastic finishes, all of that. We had it tonight, and I'm kind of sad to see it go. I know they're coming back for a third season, but this has been an amazing season for these guys, and I am so excited to see what they can do in the next season. And it's one for Morse, one for Steinmiller. Remember, those two were fighting the first season, second season, reverse script. What are we going to see next season? Could Cooper Johnson potentially come out and not only continue his run that he had this season, but potentially take the championship next season? Will we see new drivers join in next season that could have the speed to maybe make it into the championship run next season as well? Mike Tellier, for example, came in the season late, but he showed some promise. We could see him absolutely vying for the championship next season. I'm just so excited to see what we have lined up.
Yeah, same deal for Shane Terrian as well. Came in late and ended up picking those two victories. It's interesting, too, because you mentioned Daytona, and one would think Daytona, 2.5 mile super speedway, Atlanta, 1.5 mile old track surface D-shaped mile and a half racetrack. There's no similarity. Well, the racing was actually quite similar in the fact that both of those, you came into the race with relatively a clean slate, not a whole lot on the line. For Daytona, you were setting the tone for the remainder of the schedule. Here at Atlanta, you were setting the tone for the upcoming new season with the championship already decided. And really, the deciding factors came down in the final 10 laps of both. Cooper Johnson able to make it through the big wreck there in the final stages at Daytona to pick up the victory. And then Fuel, who could make it on fumes back to the start-finish line here at Atlanta. It really just came down to late race drama. Perfect way for bookend races at the beginning and the close of the season.
Absolutely. And again, everything that you saw tonight encapsulates what the season was. Now, Seth, I have a question for you, though. Of all of the changes that we saw this season and all of the consistencies we saw this season, other than Steinmiller's consistency, other than some of these other drivers' consistency, and I'm going to answer this question myself, but the one thing that I noticed all throughout this season was, and it's going to sound sappy, I'm going to preface it with that, but it was the heart that these drivers had to go out there and lay it all out and try to get this championship. And we saw how much it meant to some of these drivers. I mean, John Whitendorf, he was one of those drivers that was up there battling for the championship, and unfortunately, he couldn't continue it. He was heartbroken that he couldn't do it. This championship meant a lot to these drivers. And I guess my question to you is, would you agree that these drivers are some of the most devoted drivers to this particular discipline that we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think especially too when you consider the hard work, not only in preparation, but also out there on the racetrack when the win is on the line that these drivers have to put in to these type of race cars. These guys had to go through a transition period. We started out the season where they were fully expecting the back end to kick out on them going into the corner. About midway through the season, the update comes out for the 87 cars, and it's like driving something entirely different. All of a sudden, the car is tight going into the corner. You don't have that loose sensation that you're used to. It's like having to relearn the thing all over again. So these drivers had to basically go through an adaptability process, get used to the car all over again, and it kind of came down to whoever was able to adapt the quickest was the one that was going to be successful at that point of transition. So yeah, I mean, we've heard with these guys back at Daytona, back in the early races, they were worn out when the races were over, just how much torque they had to put in the wheels to make sure that those cars didn't spin out. And I think that even here tonight, they probably felt that same sensation. We saw the back end of the car want to step out, very much like what we saw in the early portion of the season. So you talk about the dedication that these drivers put into this race, the physical dedication that they have to put into it as well, no doubt about it. I mean, when you put that much effort into it, every win, every point that you gain, every position you gain in the standings, and the opportunity to win the championship, it definitely, every single one of those drivers meant a lot to them.
Absolutely. And I cannot wait till next season. Looking back on this season, it was fantastic. Can't wait for next season. But we still have a lot of racing. It's not like that this is the end of it for this league as a whole. Like the curtain may be pulled for this season, but we still have the potential for a Grand National Series to make a return. We still have the possibility we will have it season 3 of this season or of this series at some point. We have a lot of racing on Flatout Racing Network. We had a total of 3 races tonight, pretty much going on simultaneously. If you have the racing bug, Flatout Racing Network is the place to be right now for iRacing content. It's amazing how much stuff we had going on just tonight, and we're starting up to kick up some brand new series coming up soon on the channel that hasn't been here before.
Yeah, and there's a lot that's actually still to come this week as well. Tomorrow night, Dark Horse IndyCar Series. They're at I think it's their second short track stop in the season, Worldwide Technologies Raceway. Friday night, we're going to be bringing you coverage of the Backfire Sim Racing Cup Series as they're going to be at Michigan International. And then Saturday night, the playoff grid starts getting put together for the FTF Grand National Series as they're going to be at the Lady in Black, the Track Too Tough to Tame at Darlington. So there's a lot of good action coming up here in the latter half of this week. And as you alluded to as well, a lot of great racing events going to be coming up here in the next couple of months or so. And of course, as well, great to be able to have Great Lakes on board as well with their broadcast and everything here on FRN. Also, they did a truck series race earlier on here tonight. So yeah, a lot of racing action going to be taking place here on the Flatout Racing Network, and hope that all of you guys will be tuning in and enjoy our coverage. But Anthony, has been a great one here tonight. Atlanta, what a perfect way to close out what's been an unbelievable season. Congratulations to Hank Steinmiller on the championship, and I appreciate you joining me in the booth.
It's been fun this season. This is the first full season other than the I think it was the Formula 1 season we had earlier on this last year. That this has been the first full season I think I've completed, or second full season. So it's been a long run, and I cannot wait. Again, I cannot wait until next season. But it's been so much fun. I want to thank you and Flatout Racing Network for putting up with me and letting me be here. It's been a blast.
And a thanks to you, the fans, as well, for tuning in here tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage of the finale here for the G-Force Sim Racing Vintage Clothing 87 Cup Series as Hank Steinmiller wins the Last Call 200 at Atlanta and the championship and gets to celebrate in Victory Lane and Championship Victory Lane here tonight. For one final time for Anthony McCurry, I'm Seth Cole. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday night as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flatout Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flatout Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flatout Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.